change the order because Director Merrill's been here. We're running a little behind schedule. Move planning and development up and have assessing after planning and development. Is that okay with the council?
Yes, I mean.
Okay, can we move then?
I did put a few.
You did. Thank you so much.
What page are we on?
45.
Thank you.
Now I can't see.
Now we're on a blank page.
That's why we have a beautiful glow from our laptops. That's my worry. Here we go.
We haven't even officially come back yet, have we?
I'm going to turn the lights back on because that thing is gone for sleep.
Like my leg.
Nancy can talk a little bit before you know it.
Well, she needs that for tomorrow, so how much discussion do we have to have relative to the assessing department?
Right. And I mean, I can tell you what's in every line item.
So would you mind if, while we're waiting for this to queue up, that we just give you a quick comment on the assessing department?
Maybe a minute and a half.
Okay. Well, I can, why don't you just say what you need to say, and then if we have questions, we can
Yeah.
do it until after.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So the assessing budget in the regular line item, we have put in for a full-time assessor at the top of the level. And there's one other person, the assessing tech, that's in there. In the consulting line, there is forestry money in there. There's money extra for the consultant that we might have to pay because I'm not sure even if we got somebody that we wouldn't need somebody of Steve's type caliber to fill in those gaps. And we have Sansui, who did all of the utility lines. Steve was concerned that his values need to be defended in court, and we had $20,000 in there for that. That makes up that $35,000. The revaluation, there's $90,466. This is to get us, it's phase 2 of what Vision is doing, and this is to get us eventually to a 2-year cycle. And those are really the highlights that's in there. Oh, Vision is one other thing. We need to do a Vision software upgrade. They no longer support the software that they're on. So this is a one-time Vision upgrade, and it's $31,200 plus $4,500 for annual cost to the cloud. So those are the highlights. I'll let John talk while I get this up there.
Okay, thank you. So I think there are two things really that are interesting to me. One is the difficulty we've had trying to find a replacement for the chief assessor. And so I don't know how that's going to shake out. I think we're going to have to go back out again. We did have one interview recently, but didn't feel that we were matching up correctly with that person. So I think we're going to have to take a look at that. And if we're not successful over the course of the next recruitment, come back to the city council and talk about what do we have to do to become successful in this respect. Hopefully we'll find someone that can come forward. Also, since Susie, I noticed that he's being sued by a state, and so there's some issues there, and I don't know what the impact will be relative to his expert testimony, but I think we stand by to see what's going to happen. Whether that gets resolved or whether the suit goes forward relative to some testimony and work that he's done elsewhere. And I did see an article relative to that, and I'm not making any comment about it. I'm not valuing it. I'm just simply saying I wonder if that will have an impact as we go forward relative to our own utility work.
And I'm really sorry, it looks like we shut down totally, so we're working on it.
Okay, any questions on Councilor Zulu?
I didn't hear you, Mr. McLean, as far as who's getting sued by the...
The expert that we have doing the work relative to utility appraisals and valuations. There was an article that I was shown recently that suggested that in some of the work that he'd been doing, some of the testimony he gave was being called into question, and it was in another location out in the Midwest.
Okay.
Okay, Councilor Stone, you had a question?
I actually was trying to get clarification of who was under the gun in a formal hearing, so that helps.
Yes, so I mean, when we
Not
put
the
a-
assessor we currently employ, it's,
No, not the assessor that we currently employ, although we do have a relationship with this other particular expert, and I think many communities across the state of New Hampshire do when it comes to the Eversource and some of the other utility values that we do.
Assistant Mayor Damon?
Is he being challenged, he or she being challenged by the regulators or the utilities?
By the state itself and the regulators, so we'll see what comes of that. And again, I'm not prepared to really get into too much discussion, but I'll only to simply say we put a great deal of reliance on that expert testimony, and it could have an impact on that testimony.
thank you.
Councilor Ahern?
For first line on regular pay, you have $124,000 proposed for the assessor only? Is that the amount?
So I'm not sure what you're asking me, Councilor.
On the assessing expenses, item 101, regular pay, $24,925.
Would that be for both employees?
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I believe it is.
It's a full-time and part-time.
Let me get to that page,
Full-time.
I'm sorry.
That's what Mary said, it was the full-time
41.
and the assessing
Yeah.
tech.
Assistant tech.
In the salary and wage number, that includes the cost of a full-time assessor at the top of the range, which I believe is 81 something, close to 82,000. And then the other remainder of that is the assessing tech.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay? And Nancy's getting a thumb drive because I'm having trouble connecting to the server.
Other questions on assessment?
Just a generic question. Have we had much interest in the position of this full-time assessor?
I was mentioning earlier that we've only had one person that we've interviewed recently,
Okay.
and we did not feel comfortable with that particular match. The individual is a very fine person, but we just didn't feel it matched up with what our needs were.
Okay, thank you.
Have you found that, or do you feel, this is definitely not factual, but have you felt that it has to do with the pay range that you're not getting a lot of?
That is a good question, and I wish, I don't know if you have an answer to that at all, Mary. The question was whether or not we were having difficulty getting interested candidates for the chief assessor role as a result of the pay range.
But that was something that had come up previously in front of the council,
Yes.
and there was some question as whether, to the validity of that, so I was wondering your personal thoughts on that.
Well, I haven't put a lot of time into that particularly, so I need to do that for you, I think. One of the recommendations we'll be making relative to the merit plan may help us a little bit, but I think that what we're recommending for the merit plan, as well as an evaluation of our whole system, class and comp system, may be helpful to see where we're at in the marketplace,
Yeah.
because we're not drawing in the candidates we'd like to draw in.
Okay, so if there are other questions for assessing, I would request that we hold them. I believe Director Merrill is ready for her presentation, and she has been here for about an hour so far.
Be just appropriate to TA that and then move on.
Can we get back to that after her presentation?
So the slides are, I don't know, that first slide's a little off kilter.
46.
The message is the same. So planning and development, the first slide really talks about what we do, and I know that's often a question in the community. We're not just planners and we're not just planning. We do economic development, marketing, promotion, website, planning, boards and commissions, your GIS, zoning, building, health, property maintenance codes, project management, and grant administration. And I have listed some really incredible employees of the city who are make up the development team. Okay, Mary.
Did you turn it on? Give it to me. There you go. Just hit the side button.
Not working. Sorry about that. There we go. Also, sort of as part of this discussion, we don't work alone, obviously. We work with a lot of departments, and there's tremendous collaboration among departments in Claremont. It's wonderful every day. But we also have many Claremont residents who serve on the city boards who are very impactful on our development authority, our land use boards, housing and energy. And it takes, in our budget, you'll see a large, for example, paper and postage line items, and this is part of the reason why. On the marketing, I tried to do just a little bit of a summary there, and the whole page is not showing, but our marketing sometimes shows up in places maybe where nobody's expecting it. So, like Channel 9, WMUR, when you see pictures of the city of Claremont on your news or your weather forecast, those cameras actually were paid for out of our marketing budget, and Super Chris got it all set up on top of City Hall. So we do not just our e-news, but any website maintenance, video, print, digital. We wanted to note that the new website, we're ready to sign a contract, or we're actually negotiating a contract now. And our advertising is, we're doing some national advertising with business facilities and area business development. A lot of it is regional real estate, like New England Real Estate, Northeast Real Estate, New England Real Estate Journal. We've also got our YouTube channel, and we're working on some, we're putting together some thoughts for some new videos. We've got a series of Made in Claremont videos currently on the channel, along with some of the videos that were done with the mill development. And our marketing this year, we've really done a takeoff on a Made in Claremont with the opening of the makerspace, trying to sort of tie that all together, and it's been well received. So you'll see down at the bottom some things that we're currently working on. Just an annual sort of review of what we're doing on the building permit side in terms of numbers. I'm really pleased on the citizen complaint side of things. I've got to say it took really a long time, I think, for the city to get to the place where it could effectively staff code enforcement. But, you know, we would get citizen complaints, and then we wouldn't have anybody that could follow up the way that some of these need to be followed up. So I think, you know, we're always dealing with it, but at least I think we're getting a handle on it. These are some of our project management for this year. The Farwell block, the grants, as you know, have all been received. The lending is about to be signed off on, and construction documents, so that can move forward. The other projects, I think you've sort of seen as they move forward. The Safe Routes to Schools should be starting in a few months. Gasworks site we've completed, and the CMAQ grant is just starting. And just as I said, sort of a reminder, and I'm sorry the PowerPoint is not fitting on the screen quite the way it should. But at the end of the year, it's kind of nice to think about what has gone on in the past year. And I think I still call it the Monadnock Gasworks site, but the former Synergy site, that land came to the city after a really extensive EPA brownfields remediation process, which is wonderful. The makerspace got, opened and up and running, and it's becoming increasingly an important part of our business development work. And I'm trying to think, we've got Harbor Freight and Hobby Lobby and the Ford dealership, and I forget what's on the bottom of the page, but a few more, say noted here, McGee Toyota, Goddard Block, Farwell Block are the ones you'll see this year. So that's kind of what we've been doing in the past year. The budget itself We can turn the lights back on. That's the last, yeah. The budget itself actually went down because we had some one-time expenses in it last year. We had the match for the congestion mitigation grant in there last year, and that was a one-time expenditure. And we also had $25,000 for the website, and that's a one-time expenditure. So those things were, you won't see them in this year's budget. The other line items are, there's very little change from year to year in terms of our needs, in terms of office supplies, mileage. You will see on the rents and leases line, there's a deduction that actually went from 8,400 down to 4,400, and that's because the last payment on our car was paid last year. So again, it's just not in here. So we've had a few reductions. The Pleasant Street, I guess the one item I should talk about is the capital projects. Last year, you put $100,000 in there to start the conceptual design on Pleasant Street, which gets you to 20% design. It's going very well, and Tuesday, May 21st, we've got another public meeting where those options are going to be rolled out for the public to respond to. So this budget includes $100,000 to continue that, to move it into Phase 2, to get the surveys, traffic analysis, and also we're going to be applying for a federal build grant for this project. And I've asked the engineers if they could participate in helping to write that grant. There are some very specific engineering questions in the grant itself. So this money will move you into Phase 2 of that project and hopefully into some funding.
Phase 2 of that project would take how long? And the reason why I'm asking this is because when we look at our top priorities, and I know we've in the past talked about one of our top priorities as a council is the revitalization of downtown Claremont. And if you go to this CIP evaluation matrix that Ms. Walter prepared for us, you'll see Pleasant Street revitalization as a $5 million project. And it rated the top score 15. So how long would Phase 2 take? And at what point could we move forward with what that $5 million would be?
So we anticipated that we would, with the design that's been done now, we'd be prepared to start seeking grant funding right now. So on your next council agenda is actually an item for the build grant. That federal grant is due by July 15th, and those notices come out in the fall. We will apply for the full amount. It's highly competitive, but in terms of the Phase 2 work, it's not going to be that long. It would be, through this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I think I hear the mayor asking though is, so when will we realize the increased valuation of the property? Is that correct?
No.
Are you asking something else?
That's an excellent question. That wasn't the question I was asking, but I'm trying to get a timeline because on the other sheet that Ms. Walter prepared with regard to our debt reduction, 2021, we have two things we'll be paying off.
Right.
And that amounts to a total of $285,000, $285,619. So in thinking this through, if this is really our top priority as far as revitalization in the downtown area, what would the payment, if it was $5 million that we had a bond for, say we didn't get any grant funding,
right?
We'll hope for the best, but what would the payment be on $5 million? And would it come into that amount or less that we're paying off?
Right, so I had, on my little summary sheet at the bottom of it, I had said if we took a $10 million bond and it was 4% for 30 years, it would be $578 a year.
Yep.
So half of that would be half of that.
Which is about where we would be after paying. So my concern, the reason why I like talking about this now is because when we committed to the $100,000 in this current FY, what I didn't want to have happen was what has happened in previous cases where you spend the money on the pre-engineering or the engineering or whatever, the preliminary work, and then it sits on a shelf somewhere and it's not, there's no follow-through.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure that we as the council, and of course the next FY won't be this council in '21, but we need to have a trajectory of where we're going with this.
You do. I would submit, actually, I show this as phase 1, 2, and 3. And in my schedule, phase 3 is 2021.
Okay.
So, if that,
All right. That's an exciting plan.
It's an exciting plan. I think we probably need to know more about it. Not the plan itself per se, but what are our expectations relative to what we're doing? And I suspect that many people have a different expectation for the investment that we're making. But clearly, we're hoping that we will create new value, create jobs, excite the local economy in some fashion. You know, and how do we measure that, and so that as we put our money into it, you know, and hopefully once again we can leverage as many grants and opportunities that we can in other people's investment. So all of this kind of comes together. If you look at this as a mosaic with all these pieces to it, this, you know, everything kind of has an impact on the other piece, and even with the marketing. I was thinking about the marketing. We've got two aspects to our marketing: retention and growth. So not only do we want to market to new prospective investors, if you will, but we also want to continue to make sure that we are aware of what our local businesses who have already invested here need from us, and how they and what they're looking at in terms of their own plan. And I know you and I have spoken about this, Your Honor, because I'm aware of other communities where they actually go out on an annual basis and meet with some of their major employers and begin to think about what it will take to actually support those major employers. What does Claremont really have to offer? And I think we have a lot. And if you look at what most investors who would be coming into the area to look at us and other communities would be looking at, they're going to be looking at things like labor force. Today, it's very difficult to find an adequately educated and ready-to-go workforce. One of the things that Claremont has is a lot of housing opportunity. Now, I recognize that right now when you drive around and you look at it, some of that opportunity looks like it's in really bad shape, but it actually is an opportunity if we can begin to think in terms of how we work with that housing to create more of it, particularly for workforce housing. So we actually have some opportunity there in terms of labor. We obviously spoke about quality of life, you know, and some of the assets that we have. And this is a beautiful community. If you look up and you look around and you look at the things that we're adding to it, you know, it's located in a fabulous, fabulous place, idyllic place relative to all that. And so as we look at these things and we look at this budget, we're really thinking in terms of, okay, what's the return on our investment and how does it make us sustainable? Isn't that really what we're working on? We want a sustainable local economy. So every dollar we spend, we hope, is going to actually return on that investment opportunity. That's where I think we should be putting our attention.
Okay. Mr. Mayor Dameron.
Yeah, I noticed one item was the negotiation regarding a website.
yes.
Or a new website.
Our new website.
Okay.
Yes.
The money for that new website is all in FY19's budget?
It is.
And when would we expect, or when do you expect, a new website to appear? What's the target date?
I think it will probably be July by the time everything gets pulled over and new stuff is added.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll
Okay.
be a few months anyway.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yes, Councilor Ahern?
Director Merrill, how many hourly employees do you have?
We have 7 full-time, and we have 1 part-time. And then we have 1 person that we actually share with the library who comes over for 2 hours to do cleaning.
Of those employees, which ones are hourly and not salary?
Oh, hourly and salaried. We have 2 that are salaried and 2.5.
That's
I mean, that are
salary.
hourly, excuse me, 2.5 that are hourly.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other 5 are salary.
Yes, Councilor Ahern?
Under the line item 520, equipment and contracted services, what is that for?
So we have 2 contract line items. One is for our annual dues for the Regional Planning Commission. So that is the 18,337. The other consulting line is primarily for our GIS technical assistance. We have a contract with the Regional Planning Commission for them to assist with changes in our maps, like subdivisions and that type of thing. We also have our housing grant moving through that line, but then we're reimbursed by the grant. So it's one of those grants where you have to pay first and get reimbursed later. So it's been running through that line item.
Other questions? No? Just one question for me, and that is on the, again, referring to the CIP evaluation matrix. The amount for drainage and infrastructure, walkability and safety, that was the item that used to be 125,000, then you added Tremont Square. I'm trying to, is that the amount that we sent to the governor for?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
so the amount that we sent to the governor for his proposed budget was 125.
Correct. It was drainage issues here out around Opera House Square. So one of the areas is in your back entrance from the police station. It goes down to Tremont Street. It's sinking, and then the drainage backs up. And the other is in the square itself, where we have the dental center getting flooded somewhat regularly. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Other questions? Councilor Ahern?
You still have contracted maintenance, that you used to have somebody mowing the lawn and stuff over there, other than city employees?
That's a contract. All of our lawn maintenance and our snow removal is contract.
Okay, and which item is that?
That is in building maintenance and repair, 510.
And is that out? Does that go out to bid?
It goes out to bid, yes. Yep.
Has it gone out this year already?
We did. We went out in November, I believe. I think it's Granite State Lawn Care
Okay.
currently. About $1,300 of that line item goes for our elevator, regular inspections, and then the rest of it really is going for the mowing and plowing.
Is there any insurance cost that we're creating by not addressing these sidewalks, the drainage issues? No?
Negligence is assigned if we're aware of something and then don't fix it. But if we have issues that pop up and we're aware of them and then we come in and we do whatever it takes to remediate that problem, I think that typically we would not have any significant liability.
So we're not facing that right now with these sidewalk drainage issues?
We have filed Primex claims a couple of times for that area.
But if a citizen comes in about a claim relative to sidewalk or what have you, unless they can demonstrate negligence, typically we would not be liable. Negligence occurs when we are aware of a problem and don't fix it.
So hence my question, because if we've already if a couple of claims have already been processed for the same issue, at what point does Primex say we won't
Well,
continue?
processed and paid are two different things.
Okay.
Now, it is incumbent upon the city to maintain its infrastructure, and of course, we go out and we make repairs, periodic repairs, and we do have money in our public works budget for that purpose. But there are issues, of course, where trees heave up sidewalks and things of that nature, and damage is done during the winter, and so there's always a lot of work.
Any other questions? Councilor Ahern?
On line item 411, the postage, we went from 2,961 down to 403. Why was there a major drop?
On our postage line, I don't think there's been a cut. Am I missing something? We typically keep that around 6,000. I think we've spent year-to-date around 2,500 on that. And it's an unknown because it's our boards and commissions. We might have years where lots of stuff goes out and other years where it's just not as heavily utilized.
And isn't it also your zoning when you have
It's
to
planning,
notify?
yeah, it's planning board zoning,
notifications.
Notify butters?
and it depends on what's coming in.
Yeah, and then sending packets to boards. So we utilize really a fairly hefty amount of postage and paper that relates to our boards and commissions.
Is any portion of it offset by the cost for the
Yes.
application fee?
Yeah, we
So
do.
there's a revenue offset. I
There's a
don't know that it
revenue.
covers it 100%, but there is a revenue offset.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Councilor Kolaski?
I don't, not really specific to just this department, but overall, I don't know that we've ever seen a number. Every department, not every department, but most departments contract trash service and plowing and sanding and mowing. What would we stand to gain, if anything, bringing those services back in-house through DPW? I understand staffing issues and contractual agreements. I'm just wondering, since we own the landfill and the equipment, but we're farming it out.
Well, I think the biggest problem that we have there is that there's so many competing things, and so you have to prioritize. You only have so much capacity. If you assume X number of hours per employee, then it's seasonal work, so you're working on one thing at one point in time, which would possibly be snow plowing, et cetera. Then you do a lot of other maintenance in the better weather time. I mean, then you have X number of employees, and you also have people that go out on vacation and sick time, et cetera. So when you get right down to your capacity in terms of the actual hours that we have available to us, then it's a matter of where do we put those resources. And so some of these tasks lend themselves to outside contracts because we can actually get it done cheaper and we don't have to carry the people. So you're probably getting a lot more efficiency right now than you realize.
Okay. Other questions? Councilor Stone?
Could we actually get a breakdown of every contracted service that we have out there to see what we're actually paying for all these individual contracted services for all the different departments that utilize them?
Absolutely.
Is that going to be, I know it's going to probably be a pain, but can we actually see the difference as far as just seeing how much money is really going out to all these individual services?
Sure. And, I think we can look at that as well by taking a look at what it would actually cost you if we brought those things back into the organization, because I think that you'd actually be very surprised to see that we're probably actually getting a fairly significant efficiency.
I would like to see the cost comparison
Yes,
myself.
of course.
Thank you.
So we'll make a note of that.
Councilor Kolaski?
Do we know in-house, I'll use trash service as an example, but it seems to me as if there's not one contract for trash services in the city. It's each individual department has a different vendor.
I don't know that.
So when I do the bid for our snow removal, I also do it for the library. Our bid includes our building and the library, and also Parks and Rec has us include the staircases at the visitor center.
Yep.
So that goes out on one bid request.
I'm just curious if this is one of those things teaming up with the school district, because I just, in passing, happen to see different trash toters and dumpsters sitting at different locations, and they're all city-owned property. I don't know if something could be recaptured there as far as bidding out all of that in one sitting.
It's a
Probably-
great observation, and I
probably-
guess we'd take a look at it and see what we've got.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. I'm hearing mixed opinions on continuing with these motions to TA items. Do we still want to continue with that practice or not?
Yes.
Okay, Counselor Kowalski, why don't you do us the honors then?
I didn't know if I wanted to go that far. I would make a motion to tentatively approve the planning and development budget for $916,355.
So that motion was made by Counselor Kowalski and seconded by Counselor Kier. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So that motion passes. Thank you
And can
very
I please encourage people to come to the Pleasant Street public meeting? They've got some really interesting designs and a lot of the issues that the community has been talking about for a long time, including trucks on Pleasant Street, parking and overnight parking for residential use, and all of those things have been put into these plans, and I think that they are looking for community feedback.
So may I ask a question? We don't meet again until the day after that happens?
Correct.
So that's May 21st.
It is May 21st at 6:30 at the Community Center. That's Tuesday.
So Tuesday, May 21st, 6:30, Community Center. Are there any posters or anything that can be put up around town?
There will be tomorrow on Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
McLean?
A question for Nancy. Nancy, will that be televised?
I think that, yes, that's the plan. They televised the last one, so.
Is it possible, and would there be any value to the council for Nancy to come back after that to just give you a quick executive summary of that presentation and any of the discussion and what might ensue?
Appreciate that.
So I am going to be
Great.
here on the 22nd for the build grant, so that might be a good opportunity.
That'd be great.
Excellent, excellent.
Thank
Counselor
you.
Stone?
In addition, could we get the presentation actually sent to us as well?
Yep.
Just to be
Which
preempt,
presentation?
on the Pleasant Street.
Oh, yes.
That way we
The
can get that sent to
PowerPoint.
us as
The
well.
PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Now, are you also, Director Merrill, doing the TIF district?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
38. Yes.
so you're going to be on page
77.
Well, actually, the numbers are on page 80.
7.
The actual budget numbers are on page 80.
So, I don't know if Mary wants to say anything about the bonds. I think the good news, which she's highlighted in the summary, is that TIF budget is down 9%, so it's $107,000 less. The revenue line shows you what we have leases in the parking garage, and they pay per parking space is 100% of cost, so that's the leasing income line on your revenue side. And then the, I think, anticipated value is the $525,000. So if you go to the next page to expenses, you're going to see at the bottom, environmental cleanup. There have been, I don't know, most of you were not here at the time. Councilor Pope may have remembered this, but the city had to do $1 million of brownfield remediation at the parking garage. And after that remediation was done, as I remember, they took 15 feet of soil out of that area. And when it was done, there were groundwater monitoring wells put in place. and the testing, the state has finally determined we can close those out. So that's why you see a reduction in this line from 25,000 to 5. We're leaving just a few in there in case we have some closure issues, things that we have to pay for.
So is it DES that says we can close it out?
Yep, State of New Hampshire. So they've been in the closure process this spring, and I think we're pretty much done. And you will, in the maintenance and repair of the garage, which is the next line item, that is our, once again, our elevator, and then we have cleaning. We do have a contract in there with somebody that goes in and takes trash out, and also does some spot mowing around the building. And we also have a Fairpoint cost in there because we have an elevator that has to get to the fire department. So beyond that line item, those three things are a relatively small part of this budget. The rest of it is just regular maintenance of the garage. So we have a contract out now with some items that were recommended by Du Bois and King. And that's something you're going to have to do every year. I mean, every year there's going to be something. You've got a large structure there, you want to maintain it. So that line stays the same. And then electric drops as a result of the LED. We finished the 5-year payoff to Eversource on that LED conversion that we did 5 years ago. So you see that bill, we had 28,000 in there prior to, and I think we've spent 8,400. So that's dropped down as well.
Oh, yes, Councilor Zullo. I was lost in the numbers.
I see that. That's kind of what caught my eye is we've spent $7,386 so far this year, and you're still asking for $15,000, but the numbers dropped. You just told us.
Well, it's 80. It's currently we've spent about 8,500. We had 28,000 in there for the budget. In the last, really forever, we've had about 25,000 in that line. So this is the first time we're dropping it down.
No, last year we approved 11,000. This year you're asking for 15.
Okay, excuse me.
So I have some lights and stuff that need to be replaced out that haven't been replaced since we worked in the garage and built it. So there's some repairs and stuff that need to be done regarding the lighting. We're also 3 months behind in billing at least. You know, they don't bill very timely, so I'm afraid to drop that number too much with the repairs that we're going to need to make. So
there's $4,000 worth of repairs.
I don't think it's going to be that much, but I think we're going to need at least the 11,000, if not a little bit more, for electricity. And I think that we're going to need some money to get somebody in there to do electric repairs. So it's not just the cost of the lighting and the bulbs, it's the cost of somebody to go in and do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Wouldn't that come out of, shouldn't that be, not to nitpick, but shouldn't that be in the maintenance and repair part of the budget?
It could have, but the electric part of it with the stairs, you know, we had the lights on a motion sensor, so that was part of the reason that they had decreased. The people that were working in and around the parking garage felt that the lights needed to be on more often than they were coming on with the motion detectors. So, you know, we've made some changes there as well. So I just, the maintenance of it could go up in there, but because it was a cost of electric, I just put it down into the electric section.
Okay.
So we could track that.
Councilor Stone.
Would you feel comfortable if we move that down to 12,000 instead of the 15?
I would, because I think we're gonna, well, maybe 13,000. I don't dare cut it to the, I just don't dare. We're still behind in billing.
But you'd be okay moving it to 13?
Yeah, if we can't get something done, we'll just put it off till the following year, because these aren't, like, it's not in failure. I just want to keep the parking garage in good condition, and I don't want the corporate offices that use that building to have issues with safety for their staff. And this is one of those things that is directly billed back to the 3 developers, so.
Assistant Mayor Damon?
Yeah, several questions. First of all, the amount of money that the council approved for electric for the parking garage was $28,000, was it not, originally? And then with a subsequent adjustment, we moved $17,000 from electric on up to marketing. Is that correct?
Yes.
So really what we're talking about then is an electric budget that you're showing increasing to 15. If we move it down to 13, that $2,000 reduction also would be a $2,000 reduction in the amount that we need from the general fund, having no effect.
Correct. So it'll be dropped in the 417 budget.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, and my very, very last question, on page 79, and I may be missing something somewhere, the very last line says that the TIF budget is down 9% over last year, meaning we needed $107,000 less from fund balance this year.
Yeah, the math is wrong.
Okay.
I mean, I did have it at 80,000, so I'm wondering if that's the number and I didn't make the change.
Okay, because I got 80.
Yeah, we're down about 80,000.
80,000.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
where I was going. Oops. I wondered where I was missing the difference.
So I'd like to discuss the big picture with the council relative to the use of this deck. So it was built in 2010, and, you know, it's probably time for us to take another look at it. I know internally it's fragmented in terms of who's got responsibility for it, and this is something that Nancy and I have been talking about, along with Vic St. Pierre, et cetera. I think it lends itself to Public Works taking more of a primary role, because of the maintenance and the overall appearance of it. I'm not suggesting an exclusive role, just a primary. And so to maintain the contracts and to do as much of the work as we can, and to know what we can do and what we can't do. So I'm going to put together a committee of several of the departments and the appropriate personnel to start reviewing it on that basis. It's also come to my attention that, you know, the way in which it was financed set up some prohibitions relative to how many spaces could be used for public purpose and how many could be leased out for a revenue stream. We need to look at all of that, and make sure that this parking deck is working for us, particularly in view of the Pleasant Street improvements and all that we'd like to have for reinvestment. This either becomes something that encourages that reinvestment, or it may be holding it back. And so we want to make sure that we've reviewed all of those pieces so that once again, the deck is working for us. And how can we reduce the cost of it? As we look across the organization, is there a way to reduce some of the costs that are associated with it because we actually use it more, utilize it, and create more opportunity for revenue, as well as creating more development in the downtown community? So this is the time to start thinking about that. Even though we can't answer all that during this budget process, it needs to come out during the budget process as something that, again, creates a management tool for not only the staff, but for the city council to be able to look at these assets, and are we managing them well, and are we getting what we need from them, both in terms of revenue producer and a sustainability piece of the puzzle for the city of Claremont.
Assistant Mayor Dameron.
Just a statement of agreement. The changes in management emphasis certainly makes a whole lot of sense, as well as being a vehicle through with DPW personnel to be addressing the, I'm going to say, the immediate removal of graffiti as it occurs. I'm sure that's a problem, and that doesn't do us any good at all.
Yes. So graffiti's an issue, the cleanliness of the facility is an issue. Look at the long-term maintenance. I can tell you that within 15 to 20 years from its actual construction, we're going to have some major improvement, and renovation that will have to take place. Now, when I say major, I don't know exactly what that means. Sometimes it's spalling, with the concrete, things of that nature. But Water, again, as you heard the other night with Public Works, becomes one of those issues for us, and it will wear down the structure, and if we don't put the investment back into it, we'll have a big bill to pay at some point in time. So assessing that, and making sure that we're doing the appropriate amount of maintenance and that we're identifying the issues correctly can help extend the life of the facility and actually give us a lot of avoided cost, which would be certainly in the best interest of the community to avoid as much of that long-term expense as we can, push it out as long as we can.
Councilor Kolowski?
Some of the activity that happens down there, to my understanding, is just off camera. Is there any
Yes.
money in here to add in, including the message that's still spray painted on the wall there about,
Yeah.
there's a nice
That-
long
I-
message.
I believe that Tim Hernan was in there on Thursday or Friday, so that some of that graffiti is now gone. But I know that Red River is meeting with the police department to talk about funding some cameras.
And if we have this committee made up of a police representative, public works representative, a representative from Nancy's office, et cetera, I think we can begin to address that and have a more unified approach to some of these issues and concerns that we have.
Thank you.
Okay, any other yes, Councilor Hurd.
I'm not sure if this is the right setting for it, but I'm going to ask. Going back to the parking garage. Even across the street, up the road, downtown, all has 2-hour parking. If you can park in the parking garage free, why are we not charging for the people to pay to park there? I mean, you got Hanover where I think from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. you pay to park, and then after that you don't. Why are we missing out on this? And this would help with the maintenance and the electric. I mean, my prior job, and I'll give you an example. How many times I went in there and dealt with abandoned cars from other communities that were just left there, and the PD would have to deal with this. But at least if they paid initially, offset. So I think we need to move that in that direction.
Yeah, I think I can tell you it was a policy decision at the time that the garage was opened. I think that we wanted to encourage everybody to get in there and use it and get off the street because of the parking crunch down on Water Street. But there are 56 of those spaces that are public, and that's certainly up to the council to consider.
And most of those are up on the top deck.
For the follow-up?
Just to follow up to the same parking issue, and I think that we need to come into the times. And nothing against the park enforcement officer that's since retired, but again, communities are we have 2-hour parking, and we got to get somebody to go by and chalk the tire, where other communities have gone to kiosks, pay as you go. Either use credit cards, and now some of them are even to the point where you can have an app on your phone to do it. So I just think that we need to start moving to the times, and we do have premium parking.
Councilor Stone?
So under the parking garage, if the city council wanted to entertain going to having paid parking, is there any prohibitions to an agreement that we have with anyone in regards to that? Or is that something that the council could take under its advisement?
So the leases, they are already paying, so they pay 100% of cost. So you'd be looking at the 56 public spaces, and that would be completely up to the city council to
So there's
consider.
no restriction on what the city council can
There's no
implement?
restriction on those 56 at this time.
Councilor Keir?
So in regards to that, I would love to get some information on how often those spaces are actually used and what the cost of purchasing these more high-tech pay meters would be and maintenance. And do we think we'd actually be able to offset based on our current use? I don't really know what it is, so maybe we would, but I also am concerned about spending money on more things that are going to need to be maintained if it's not going to make the money back for us.
It's a very good point, because having been involved with a different community that had a lot of parking meters, et cetera, I can tell you that and then had a sizable number of people who were out doing parking enforcement, and they had a parking deck, a public parking deck, et cetera. It can get expensive, and it may not actually really generate a lot of additional revenue. On the other side of the coin, if you have a need for the turnover, that's when you have parking enforcement.
Right.
So I don't know that because we don't really have a lot of parking enforcement that we actually have the kind of numbers that you would want. But I can tell you that I've seen some creative solutions, and for example, and again, I don't know that we can do this because I know that there's a public purpose aspect to our bonds that we have and that we would have to maintain, meaning that we have to have that available, a certain percentage of the spaces available to the public in order to realize the tax exempt status that we have at least on one bond. But I've seen other solutions such as having these spaces available during the day for general parking and then leasing the spaces at night to tenants who might live in the area. I don't know that that fits here or not, but if it did, that would be a simpler solution and would provide some additional revenue towards the operations of the facility. So those are all things that I think we'll talk about at a different level inside the organization and then begin to come back to the council, or I'll certainly leave that in my note, my letter going out the door that we should do that and finish up on it. So hopefully we can do some of that and give you a little bit clearer picture of where we're going and what the impact is for the use of that facility and how it really impacts on your success downtown.
It is impactful since Sunny's retirement. The businesses downtown really are talking about when there's not a parking enforcement officer down there, they really notice it, that the 2-hour spaces become all-day spaces.
Yeah.
And it impacts the businesses, trying to get people in and out. So
It's a double-edged sword, though, because there'll be people that will be getting very unhappy if they get a parking ticket. So,
Councilor Stone? I mean, sorry, Councilor Ahern?
Need more coffee? I would only say that it would be easier, I think, for the police department to have an officer walk and look at a tag on the dash that says the time it expires,
yes.
than having the officer or whoever go down and chalk a tire and have to come back 2 hours later and do it again and check the thing, and whether or not that person, somebody moved the car and hypothetically, the tire rotation was kind of the same.
Well, as you know, it's very difficult to have any kind of scheduling of the police department. I mean, we're already down an officer or two anyway. We're always chasing in the additional staffing or billeting. And then if you look at the way in which we get assigned when the calls come in to dispatch, there's a priority system already on. So to know that you can get in there on a routine basis using an expensive human resource, which is a police officer, when you consider the amount of money you spend on training and what it takes to keep that person in the field, is it a good use of that person's time, that resource, to go out and do parking enforcement? Most likely it isn't. So it's probably not reliable because of all the priorities that we have. So that's another thing we have to look at in the context of downtown and its parking needs, and what do we really need to do, and does it really beg the question of, do we have a kiosk? Do we have additional rental sources that we could use? Are we getting long-term parking on the street that is negative towards the turnover that we need relative to businesses? I suspect we don't have enough information at this point in time to really give you a clear picture, but it's something we can do going forward from here.
So when do you think, I'm cognizant of time here, when do you think we could have a presentation along those lines?
Oh, I don't know, Your Honor. I mean, we're starting from scratch, really, in many instances, at least as far as I know. Now, I may find that there's a lot more record keeping over in the police department than I'm aware of, which would be helpful.
So could you at least come back to us at some point and give us a timeline when we can really delve into?
I think my end date is July 1st, so I
somebody
can certainly get something going.
Yes.
Going on it.
Yeah.
Yes, because I think there is a policy question that needs to be decided about paying for parking or not. No, somebody's hand was up first. Who was first? Councilor Kolowski?
I think it's not just the parking garage that needs to be looked at as far as the parking. It would be overall, because I don't want the opposite to happen. We're trying to encourage people to use the parking garage, and then we're actually would be forcing them or making the decision that you want to cram onto Pleasant Street instead of actually paying a fee to park in the garage. The other one is, I don't know, and I should have asked when the chief was here, but there was an article out there about it being ruled unconstitutional to actually chalk tires. That was a federal court.
Yeah, we did see it. We saw that article.
So I don't know what the bearing here would be on that going forward, but
Put spray paint.
Counselor Stone?
I would think with everything going down in succession with Pleasant Street revitalization and the parking issues there, we should probably refer this to the policy committee and get a copy. I know Keene has a very comprehensive parking enforcement action that they implement. And Manchester, New Hampshire also has a very aggressive parking. Maybe get a copy of those policies, refer it, because he's right, Councilor Kolosky is right, is that if we're going to do the parking garage, we might as well do the Pleasant and downtown area at the same time for paid parking. And do it all in one conclusive policy.
Counselor Ahern?
I would just end by saying that the fines for parking have never changed that I know of. And before I retired, I had people say I would rather pay the $10 and park all day and have a ticket on my car because it was, the prime parking. So we also have to look at.
You only have one ticket.
We have to look at the fines.
So you have the opposite side, which is you have a lot of businesses, or you're trying to encourage a lot of new business. And so an assessment of what is really, do you have a problem and what does it look like? I think that assessment has to take place first. And then what are your opportunities and what are the roadblocks? And if we can identify your opportunities and your roadblocks, then I certainly think that could drive some policy decisions.
Okay. So, somebody wants to make the motion? Assistant Mayor Damron.
Yeah, one question, then I'm going to make the motion with the $2,000 electric reduction that Councilor Stone was suggesting, that we tentatively approve the grand total budget for the downtown TIF district at $781,600.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so Assistant Mayor Damron made the motion, was seconded by Counselor Zullo. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
I want to make the motion as well for the tentative approval for the revenue piece of the downtown district, to tentatively approve that amount at $781,600.
Second.
So that motion was made by Assistant Mayor Damron, seconded by Counselor Kier. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. All right.
How about the assessing vote?
I'm getting that. Boy, people just want to help me right along here.
Sorry.
They're hungry.
so moved.
So
We'll come back to it after lunch.
Before we get to that, I see that Chief Burr is here, and I see on our schedule,
We're going to be here till 7:30 p.m.
no, what I see is the lunch is sort of not even in the budget, in the agenda.
I had it in at noon.
And he is here already, so
That's because he likes to come in.
as long as he knows that he's going to be waiting for a while.
Well, he's not supposed to be here until 1.
Your Honor, we did ask all the department heads to come a little bit early, just in case we were moving along faster than we are.
Well, you were being very,
The agenda does say noon.
That's a great attitude.
Yeah,
yeah,
What was I
mine,
thinking?
brackets.
yeah, but
Crazy attitude.
it's not going to work out this way.
No.
But anyway, okay, as long as he knows we're just about to break for lunch. Who wants to make the motion for the 46 assessing department?
Got that number.
It's on page 41. Actually, 42 will give you the final figure. Okay, Counselor Kier.
I would motion that we approve the assessing budget at $355,485.
Is there a second?
Second.
And I think you said it. So the motion was made by Counselor Kier and seconded by Counselor Zullo. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? We're good. Okay, so we are now at lunch break, and we have it allocated as 40 minutes. Is that okay with everybody?
Oh, we discussed an hour.
it's-
all you get. We're behind.
We do have
So,
donuts for those
please-
I think we should do it at 15, that we're back on schedule.
Okay, so be back at 1:05, please.
You guys wouldn't make it work.
And I just want everybody to be reassured that although our agenda says we adjourn at 5, we were promised 3:30. So whatever we don't get done, we will rearrange for a different time. So we have before us on page 25, the section on welfare, and we have Director Carr here.
I would just like to, before,
Oh, you would like to say a few words?
yes, I would, because
Yes,
I would just like to call out to the city council's attention that Suzanne has been really quite a good soldier for our organization. When Doré had her unfortunate accident, her assistant, Peg Watson, came over and left Suzanne without that additional coverage. And so it has not been easy for her. It's been a sacrifice. And I just want you to know how much I greatly appreciate her. And again, typifies the kind of people that we have working here in Claremont who go the extra mile to make sure that we get the job done.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Thank you, Director Carr. So would you like to begin?
So, as you all know, you hear my spiel every year that my program, the General Assistance Welfare Program, is a statutory requirement. You're stuck with me. It's an unfunded mandate. We do the best we can, but we do not have our crystal ball. I order one every year, and every year it's delayed. The good news is the 2020 budget that I put in front of you is there's no increase to the bottom line. There's actually, I think it's about a $2,000 decrease with hopefulness of the upcoming year. There's no real changes in any of the line items. I did just redistribute a few $1,000s from health insurance because of a plan change for my employee, and was able to redistribute that to increase the fuel line item and the rent line item. Fuel has been a little tricky this year. Our requests for oil assistance has remained pretty steady over the last few years. Propane has doubled over the last couple of years. So that's the reasoning for my looking for a little more money there. And just always, rent is always the big question mark. It's obviously the largest line item that I have. Our rent requests are trending upward. That directly correlates to just the lack of affordable housing and the rental increases that's going on across the state. Vacancy rate, as of last year, the vacancy rate in Claremont was 0.9%. I'm not seeing it get any better, to be honest with you. I don't know. The housing report isn't out yet. It usually comes out in June, so I don't know what they're looking at. It's just not, it's not really getting any better, so.
0.9%, huh?
Yes. It's, and I believe that was the lowest, it's lowest in the state.
Good question.
Yes, Councilor Pope?
When was the last time we had to go before the city manager had to go before the city council for a supplemental budget on this?
I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3.
It does happen.
Do you feel these figures are close enough to keep us from having to do that? Or do you see any things that need to be increased now so we don't have to go before a supplemental budget?
I don't know, because I don't know what's going to happen over the next year. My budget for this year is looking pretty good, so I'm hopeful. I'm always hopeful. However, we just don't know. I don't know what could happen with the economy. I don't know what could happen with program changes, state changes, federal changes.
Right.
All of that stuff hasn't been decided yet. You know, you've got a state budget that, you know, this summer, and then the feds in October. If they make program changes, obviously that affects us, but my budget's already done. So I just don't know.
So it's a rolling average, isn't it? I mean, we do the best we can based on whatever we have for trend analysis as well as whatever we can forecast. But, you know, I think that this is probably as accurate as it's going to get, and we have to wait and see what actually happens, because you're absolutely correct, Counselor, that ultimately with certain things we are required to offset the cost, and if it goes over or above what we've allocated here, we'd have to come back for a supplemental. I don't foresee it right now, the economy, et cetera. It's so hard to really know, but I think presently speaking, I think if you've been watching the markets, if you've been watching it, the issues relative to trades, issues, it doesn't appear that our economy is about to take a big dip. And there's seasonal adjustments in the prices for, commodities, but I don't think it's significant at this point in time.
Councilor Pope?
Although not related to this budget, and I talked to Mary about this earlier, last year we had approved a position, it was a paralegal / floater position, and the bringing of this budget and the issue with Dory that was just previously mentioned, and Peg Watson filling in,
Yes.
was that position ever filled?
Yes.
Because that could have possibly,
We just filled that position. We had a opportunity to have someone come and work for us for a while, a young woman who came in and worked for us on a program that was completely funded by an outside agency. And so as we got to know this person, she was doing a fabulous job. She had some really good credentials, and she was interested in the position that we have. We'll have her, it's our intent to actually employ her now on the city payroll, and there'll be a 1-year probationary period, which is typical. During that period, there's some additional training that we'll mandate for her, but I think that she's a Claremont resident, so I think it's a really big win-win for everybody.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No, is there a motion? Councilor Kowalski.
Motion to tentatively approve the welfare budget for $369,765.
Second?
So the motion was made by Councilor Kowalski, seconded by Councilor Kier. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you, Director Kier, for
Thank you.
sharing your Saturday with us.
Yes, go have some fun.
Next on the agenda, we have the library. So, Mr. McLean, would you like to say a few words?
Well, I don't get to interact with Michael very often. I do believe, though, he's doing a wonderful job. He's been with the city quite a number of years and understands the library quite well. And we've had some conversation, but I have no reason to believe that he's not fulfilling all of our requirements.
That's the plan, for you to not have any reason to believe that.
And he's an actor, too.
Exactly, don't forget that.
So library expenses can be found on page 63 of your budget. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, how to follow that act. See, that's the way you...
The mayor set me up.
You don't want to follow. You don't want to follow a good act, right? Well, first, just like to say that I want to commend the staff over at the library. They do an amazing job. They come in every day, and I'm always surprised at how hard they are trying to make things work better, and they're always working together. And it's the best group of people I've ever worked with, and just say that off the top there. You'll notice I probably had more of the extras than anybody else. I don't know. I guess
You didn't beat Victor.
No?
No.
Okay, well, pretty close. Part of that's because I'm stubborn, I guess. I did ask for the return of the position that we lost in the 2018 budget, full-time position. If you recall, we lost a position. We moved one person from adult services to children's services to cover a position, and were not able to fill that adult services position. So that's a large part of the extras here. The other part of the extras is, again, returning the funding that was lost for the book line, also in the 2018 budget.
So one of the standard questions typically would be, what about the print collection, and what does it cost to maintain it, and also to bring new books into the collection itself and grow the collection? And is there really, in this day and age, with so much information being available to us online, what is the future of a print collection? And I think that's a good question, and I'll be happy to help with it.
Just to start with that is that this money isn't just a print collection. It's also compact disc, DVDs. It also pays for our downloadable collection that's online for ebooks or audiobooks online. Anything that would be part of what we would consider our circulating collection would be paid for out of this number. So it wouldn't just be print books. If we are transitioning into non-print things, again, this is the same budget line that's going to pay for those things.
Mr. Mayor Dermott?
Yeah, one line jumps up, I guess, a little more than I would have thought it would. Technology and internet, and maybe it gets to exactly what you were just talking about.
That one is actually, if I remember correctly, oh, there we go, next page. That's an increase to pay for the maintenance agreement on our new circulation and cataloging system that we got 2 years ago.
Okay.
That amount of money is just for that. It pays for the maintenance and licensing for that. It's a system that's hosted remotely. We don't host it on our computers, and so it's a hosting fee as well.
Okay. So that's software or?
Software maintenance, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering
Yeah.
between equipment, M&R, and technology and internet.
Yeah,
where the
it would
best
be
fit
more
is.
software than equipment.
So can we go back to books? In the line item, it is $30,000, and you're asking for an additional $10,000.
Yes, that's correct.
Put back in. So there's investment in printed materials and non-printed materials. Even though that amount was taken out in 2018, there was still $30,000 that was put into that.
Correct.
So I guess I would ask, what is to be gained by the additional $10,000?
Well, a library collection is not a static thing. It's a growing, changing thing. If you reduce the amount that you're adding each year, then over time your collection ages. Your average age of your materials goes up, and the relevance of those materials to the public goes down as they become older. So an additional $10,000 just lets us not fall as far behind. In the U.S., every year between 600,000 and a million books are published. Every year, we can purchase maybe 2,000 of those. So any amount that's an increase in that helps us stay more relevant for the public. It's also, as we talked about non-print and electronic things, if that number is lower, it gives us less flexibility to move into new areas as they come available.
So, Your Honor, one of the things that I had noticed over the years is that the print collection, actually the demand for the print collection stayed very high. And so if there's been a reduction, it's probably been on the research side, but the general print collection, typically in the library, whether it be here in Claremont or in Keene or in Concord, there's probably still quite a demand for it, but the relevancy of the print collection is exactly as our library director has said. It has to stay current, and so the only way to do that, of course, is to invest in it. Now, technology is also in the modern library today. And there's a lot of things that people do online, and it's probably, whether or not you will see this as important or not is a question of your own mindset. But if you think about the library as providing everybody with an equal opportunity, then maybe in Claremont, it's really important to have that technology there, because it might be the only place that some people can actually interface with the technology. And so I know libraries today, as they begin to add to them and to create more opportunity, are putting in a lot more technology. But the interesting thing is the print collection has not gone down in terms of its popularity.
Do you want to come work for me?
Well, yeah, I see, and I guess I have a passion, I'll just disclose it, because I think that the library is a place, and I think it's been recognized for well over 100 years now, the library is a place where the values of our society can be captured, including how to be a citizen in our community. And the values of citizenship, of course, are important to all of us, because in order to preserve our republic and whatever in our traditions, people have to be aware and have to have the opportunity to become aware.
Well said.
Couldn't have said it better.
Any
I'm
other
not running for any
questions?
office.
Assistant Mayor Dameron?
Yeah, just one question for our finance director. The percentage increase in health insurance from this year to next, what are you using as a percentage increase?
I budgeted 8%.
Okay, 8%.
Somebody might have changed plans.
Okay, I guess that's what I was going to get at. There was
Yeah.
a pretty large drop in health insurance, about $9,000.
Yeah, we did have someone change plans. Yeah.
Did you? Okay.
So, I'm surprised that you didn't advertise the fact that your air conditioning has been recently installed. Would you like to speak to
I
that?
would. The air conditioning has been installed. I'll give Peabody Electric a plug. They came in and spent about a week there and got it all done in a week. And it does work. Again, waiting for some warmer weather to give it a really good test. So we're very happy about that. I think it's going to be a very different summer than we're used to. I expect more business this summer because of that. And certainly people will stay longer. You know? And a shout out to Mascoma Bank and the Helen Cormier bequest for helping fund that. Absolutely.
Well, any other? Councilor Kier?
Did we also, I see that your electricity line item went up. Is that to offset the AC?
Right. It's an estimate on increased electricity for the air conditioning.
Anybody else? Yes, Mr. McLean.
So, are you able to get any of the investment services through the library? People are interested in investing, in stock market or what have you?
We haven't had those in quite a few years.
Okay.
You're talking about like the value line,
Yes.
that sort of thing.
I know some
We
libraries
haven't had
provide it.
those services in quite a few years. They're expensive.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Other questions? Councilor Klinger, did you want to make the motion?
I did. I'm not sure if anybody else is going to agree with this, but I would like to make a motion to approve the library budget at $404,369. That includes the line items for books and training.
Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay. Discussion. So that motion was made by Councilor Kier and seconded by Councilor Kowalski.
And your number was 404-369.
Yes, ma'am.
322. 404, 322.
No, 369. 22 is just for the books. I did books and training. Training, there was a line item for $47 additional for training.
That was for a new person.
Huh?
That was for a new person.
Oh, that was for the new person? Because it was $47 last year, or $50 last year, and
47 is for record check.
So that's not for like ongoing training for any of your people?
No, that's the cost of doing the background check if we hire someone, which,
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'd like to amend that, you are correct, to the 404,322.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Discussion. Yes, Counselor Stone.
I think with, like most budgets, we need to look at the wants versus needs, and also understand that eventually, as we include additional funds in any budget, we're going to be raising the tax burden. And with that consideration, especially this year, I would be more apt to go with the city manager's recommended budget of $3,904.3322.
Okay. Other comments? How is the Friends of the Library engaged as far as materials, fundraising?
They raise between $5,000 and $6,000 a year on average, but none of that really goes towards materials. It's all spent for programming.
Okay.
Children's summer reading program, adult programs, bringing in performers, lecturers, those kinds of things.
Okay.
For the most part.
Okay. Right. Any other thoughts? Okay. Is there, all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
How many ayes do we have? So, 2, and I guess the rest of us are opposed, correct? Okay. So the 2 that were for that were Councilors Kier and Lassard.
I'm currently opposed. I mean, we still have.
Yep, this is all tentative. This is all tentative. Nothing's written in stone at this point. Assistant Mayor Dameron.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to tentatively approve the city manager's proposed budget of $394,322 for library expenses.
I'll second it.
Okay, so that motion was made by Assistant Mayor Dameron and Councilor Stone. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Opposed. And so, who else? So Councilors Lassard and Kier are opposed. Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you for spending your Saturday with us. So next on the agenda is the fire department. That's on page 54 of your book, I believe. We have with us today Chief Burr. Mr. McLean, would you like to say a few words first?
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Your Honor. So I've enjoyed working with Chief Burr very much. I think that he has demonstrated a lot of versatility relative to his abilities. Not only does he understand the fire department intimately and provides, I think, a tremendous amount of leadership, but he also has the airport within his portfolio and has a pretty clear idea of what needs to happen. He certainly is a person that we can rely on. He does a first-class job for us, and he's a very responsible person. But that, you really won't ask me for a reference on Chief Burr, I know, but that comes to mind as I think about, how fortunate we are to have people of his caliber.
Okay, Chief Burr.
Okay, so as you can see, the budget, as far as other than personnel and whatnot, haven't really changed. What you do see is funds being transferred from 2 or 3 line items to another. On another note, there was a question directed to the city manager regarding questions about the apparatus plan that we have. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, in talking with the people at ISO, they have to actually go in and grab that data, and with the particular questions that I had or information that I had forthcoming to them, it takes time. So honestly, I've been able to answer some of your questions, but I think in fairness to the packet that you requested, I'd like to refrain from trying to answer any of those questions until a later date. I think it'll give you a better vision of the ISO and how the apparatus replacement plan will interact with that.
Mr. McLean?
So may I ask the Chief a question then? So Chief, when was the last time we did an ISO rating?
The published rating came to us in 2017.
So we've done we've obviously been evaluated. I've gone through a number of these ratings myself. I don't see anything in terms of what we've proposed in this budget that would have any kind of impact, either negatively or positively, on that ISO rating, including the streamlining of equipment or the way in which we provide revenue for hydrant service. So, I think that the chief will follow up on that and make sure that that's the case. But I do not believe it will have any negative impacts relative to our ISO rating, which was actually increased and is a benefit to our property owners in the community, obviously, because it lowers their insurance rates.
Okay. So what is the projected time frame you think you might have?
ISO didn't give me that time frame, so honestly, I can't give you a time frame, but I would hope that within the next week I can have those figures and those comments answered.
Okay.
In addition to Mr. Kolosky's questions, I actually had some also in regard to the ISO and changes that have happened in the department since that time that may reflect a change in the ISO rating.
And the reason I can say what I said with some assurity is that having worked in another jurisdiction where we actually streamlined the equipment, started combining pumpers and and tankers and things of that nature, and reduced the size of the fleet, but also had multiple purposes for a piece of equipment. It did not have a negative impact on our ISO rating, and actually was actually a way of actually getting a little bit more efficiency into the department and less cost to the taxpayer.
And for the public's benefit, what does ISO stand for?
Insurance Services Office. It's a tool that insurance companies, government entities, and like marketing entities use as a gauge to determine what your rates will be for local insurance. Though it does utilize that data for residential, it's more geared for business because of the great loss and fire loss to businesses, industry. But it does affect both industries. It's not necessarily a tool that's all they use, but they may use it.
Thank you. Questions, Councilor O'Hearn?
It's a two-part question. On line item 610, public fire protection. Chief, what is that for?
610, essentially what that fire protection line item means is that's a rental for the 433 municipal fire hydrants. Those are the fire hydrants that the city owns, in and above private hydrants that maybe you would own as a private business or such. So what the water department does is they take the number of hydrants the city owns and they times it by the current fee schedule. Currently that fee schedule is $372. So you take that number and you come up with $161,076.
Okay.
Basically, I get a bill from the water department, a one-time bill, I pay it.
Councilor Zullo.
How come, Mr. McLean, how come there's a zero in your proposed budget for that item?
So that's what I'm recommending.
You give them to us for free?
Yes. That's what I'm recommending as part of my message to the council, and we've spoken about it briefly, I think, on several occasions now with the full council. So it is my recommendation to the city council that we actually amend the ordinance that prescribes that particular payment, and we no longer make that payment. I believe that we can do that for a variety of reasons. We did do a survey of other communities, and we found that, for example, Franklin, Lebanon, Keene, Newport, etc., did not pay such a fee for their hydrant system. And I think one of the reasons for it, of course, is that the hydrant system is there and has a dual purpose. Not only is it providing for fire protection, but it also is a very necessary aspect of the system itself, which is that we have to have an ability to flush out the system. And so the hydrants give us that. And to me, in my mind, it's primary. When I looked at the number of incidents we had relative to fighting fires, it was very few fires per year. And the way the chief told me how they fight these fires, which typically they do a fabulous job on, we don't lose very many properties. They basically go in, they can make the connection, they fill up the tank, and they basically fight the fire from there. So it's not a big, huge drawdown on our system. The only time we've had a huge drawdown in the most immediate future has been when a fire over in Ascutney took place, and the firefighters from Ascutney came over and filled up extensively in order to fight the fire that they had. So Claremont itself, our experience has been great. This is a lot of money to take from our property tax base when we're already stretched very thin relative to our revenue source. And to take this out of our revenue source and to use it to offset the cost of, and basically subsidize our utility, I think deserves your attention and consideration, and my recommendation would be that you discontinue that. And yes, and so we've put it into some new apparatus. We're making a recommendation that we pick up some different apparatus for the fire department, streamline that as well, and also put some money towards paving, which we think is also very important to the community.
Comments? Assistant Mayor Damon.
Yeah, I guess certainly not to that degree, but there are two benefit lines in particular that got my attention. 130 retirement and 132 unemployment. I don't see immediately drops in regular pay or other pay that would lead to those kinds of reductions in budgets.
Okay, so unemployment, we had a holiday last year. That was part of those holidays we got back from Primex.
Yeah.
They do a 5-year rolling average of what it's going to cost you for unemployment, and we had several layoffs. We're now past that, so our unemployment dropped significantly.
All right.
Workers' comp for the fire department about doubled, which I had to come back to you and do a supplemental from that holiday.
Right.
And then retirement dropped slightly, and because the rates for July 1st have dropped in all areas.
Really?
Yeah, it's going to save us $40,000 overall amongst all groups. But you see a big impact because for the fire department, you're typically paying like 31 cents on every dollar. So when it drops a couple cents times that amount of money, it adds up and it looks.
Okay.
So if I follow up on that question, so
Yes.
has there been any explanation from the retirement system why the rates might have dropped?
I have no idea why they dropped rates because, I mean, they got a good return and I understand that, but we still have such a huge unfunded liability that why they didn't put into that, I don't know, but they didn't, so. They did not give me an explanation, they just sent out new rates.
Well, so that's another whole issue, unfunded liability relative to the retirement program. I don't have enough information to be able to answer that. I'm not sure that you have to buy down the cost of unfunded liability, although there is a specific percentage relative to that unfunded liability that they do use as a best practice, but I'm not sure where they're at.
Question? Councilor Pope, I think you had your hand up.
I think it was 2 years ago, we had to vote for a supplemental for fire rollout gear. Do we have a reserve account for that in the future?
Well, I can answer that question. What I do in the, if you look at line item 940, machines and equipment, what we do is each budget we look at the equipment and its end date, if you will, when it needs to be retired because of the timeline, and we purchase gear from that line item. So every year we're purchasing, 3, 4, 5 sets of gear.
Thank you.
So we're not in the position any longer of having gear that's
Not right now. Not right now.
Okay, Councilor Kolowski?
Can somebody touch upon what was in the CIP as far as the retaining wall that's flagged as a safety concern for the fire department and the public, and what we're doing to address that, if anything?
Well, to answer the second part of your question, we're not doing anything. I mean, we backfilled that many years ago. It's holding. It's probably a couple $1 million job anyway to do anything with it. But at this point is we aren't doing anything with it. The material that's been put there is holding it in place, and until the city chooses to move forward and expend the funds to research and scope that project, it's still there.
The only reason I asked that is because in here it gives us a number of 135,000. So when I saw that, I was wondering if we pushed off replacement of apparatus for a year and used that funds to do that safety concern. But if that's not an accurate figure, then
In my short tenure, 100,000 doesn't go far, and I'd be surprised if by the time you got engineering, scoping involved, that you wouldn't have a shovel in the ground yet. And that's just knowing the projects that we do with the airport, which is a lot of scoping and a lot of engineering, probably would just barely make that. And who knows what they would find beyond utilities and so on and so forth.
Chief Bird, could you speak to on our CIP evaluation matrix that Ms. Walter put together of the higher priority items? Talks about for the fire department, traffic light upgrades. But I thought, didn't we get a CMAQ grant or something along those lines for that?
That's correct. We have a CMAQ.
You can answer the CMAQ.
That's correct. We are working on that. In fact, we just recently chose a firm to scope that project. So it is moving forward. It involves 10 controlled intersections, what I call the Washington Street corridor, from Home Depot to Water Street.
And how many traffic intersections do you have total?
Controlled intersections, we have 15, and then 2 what we call uncontrolled flashing lights.
So when this first went into the CIP, it was because of all of the traffic intersections? So the CMAQ is only going to take care of the Washington Street ones, but we should still be putting money into reserve to get those other ones upgraded as well?
Other than the ones on the Washington corridor, are there other, of the ones that remain, is there any particular intersection that you're very concerned about?
There's a few I have concerns over. North in Elm, north in Hanover. The cost of those projects, or I'd say the problems that we're running into is copper wiring has become corroded. When we have service done or we have a pole knocked down, the techs come in, they have to snip the wire back, and they're having difficulty with getting enough wire. So I think we could recondition those intersections, but we'd have to probably have an analysis done to see what we're really talking for costs. Just to give you an idea, we had a truck run over just a single post walk light at North and Hanover, $5,000 just for that one piece of apparatus. So intersections are expensive. Cameras, we just did an upgrade or a repair on North and Elm Street. We had a piece of equipment that we use for that particular intersection is a cambered intersection versus a loop in the ground. And the piece of equipment was failing. It was causing backups on the side street, mainly Elm Street. North Street is the through street. And that particular piece of equipment was $6,600. So we deal with some expensive equipment. But to give you a true picture of what it would cost to upgrade those intersections, we could certainly put that out to bid or get an analysis from the company that we use.
And how much would the analysis cost?
That's a good question. I don't know if they would do it pro bono or...
Can we find out?
Sure.
Yeah, the estimate that was in here was $25,000 an intersection, and that's probably 3 or 4 years old now.
Okay. That's it for my questions. Any other questions? Yeah, Councilor Kowalski.
I don't know that I have the full CIP. I have it pulled up in front of me, and I remember from past ones that apparatus was listed in there. What I have here for what the planning board looked at, I don't see apparatus in here. So the issue I have is we're not charging for hydrant rentals, and then we're looking at using those funds into making some changes in apparatus. If you look at the things flagged in the CIP, we're not addressing those, but we're addressing items that aren't listed here. I'm not arguing that it's a good or bad move. It just concerns me that we're bypassing things that are approved in the CIP. And that it doesn't make much sense to me. The bucket truck shows for the fire alarm shows slated to be replaced in 2019, but we're bypassing that one. And I don't know, do we have, it hasn't really been explained to us. Normally we see for DPW a lease proposal or we're going to enter into a lease. Is this, so the apparatus that we'd be replacing, like car one and the whatever truck, is that a lease? So the 166 would go towards a lease for X amount of years?
A portion of the 166 would go towards a lease for X amount of years.
Okay.
And the apparatus hasn't been in the CIP for, I think, 3 years. Mr. McQuarrie, they had a discussion with the planning board about that's not really appropriate for the CIP. And the council still gets any lease agreements. We come before you for approval for those anyway, because they're more than 1 year.
Okay.
So even though you might approve this particular budget, we would still be coming back to you. You'd have another opportunity to discuss this.
Other questions? Councilor Stone.
I'd actually make the motion to accept the city manager's fire budget of $2,416,317.
Second. Okay, so that motion was made by Councilor Stone, seconded by Councilor Keir. The amount was $2,416,317. Okay? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Opposed. Just for the reasons that I didn't get any of those. I understand why they weren't answered, but I didn't have enough info.
So there was one counselor in opposition, that was Councilor Kowalski, but we will be hearing back from the chief with regard to those questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the airport, and that is on page 68 of your book. Chief Burr? Or did you want to say a few words, Mr. McLean?
You want to talk about the airport director?
Yeah, the same person, right? Ditto right there. To the extent that you are enjoying this conversation that you have with me, if you're not, then I don't need to say another word, but I do think the airport's a fabulous resource for the city, and I know that you get different comments from different people about the airport in general. What does it really do for us? Is it a country club, et cetera? It actually, I've seen it work from, to the community's well-being. I think in terms of bringing in outside investment, having an airport is incredibly important. And the fact that this one is relatively self-sustaining is a plus.
And it will be ADA accessible for committees.
And it will be ADA accessible for committees. We were talking to the chief about the possibility of actually having meetings out there at the airport once the new terminal building is put in place.
Excellent. So this is exactly the same budget as was approved for this current fiscal year. Is there anything you would like to say, Chief Burr?
Just like to point out to the council, it's simple math, but we operate that airport, just under $28,000 a year. And that's maintaining, the pump system, the hangars, any problems with equipment, snow removal equipment, and lawn care equipment. And so it's a pretty small budget, but we do get a lot done. And just as a point of interest, if you've been out by the airport recently, you notice that we've had some improvement with the Great Lakes or Daniels construction site. We continue to improve that site with the cooperation of the DPW using some of their material from the wastewater treatment plant, and I'm sure some of you are aware of the issues regarding disposal of that. So The director and myself have worked together and using that product to continue to improve that site, and eventually that'll be green instead of gray. We continue to do small things around the airport. Currently now, we've replaced lighting on 2 of our hilltop beacons. Some of you may or may not be aware, but in addition to the airport facility, you know, the land that we have that encompasses the airport, we are also required and control and maintain 6 hilltop beacons around the city. So currently we have, I believe, 4 that have been converted to LEDs versus incandescent bulbs, 2 of which took place this spring. So we always look for efficiencies in those areas. One of the hilltop beacons was changed a year ago, or actually more than a year ago, year and a half ago, say, to solar battery power. So those are really nice units. They're very expensive to convert, about $20,000. So the cost benefit with power is kind of long term. So we're choosing to use the LED version. It gives us longevity too, besides reduced power.
Excellent. Councilor Lassard.
Being on the airport committee, I was very impressed. My question, if we didn't have Mr. Hamill, who does all of the volunteer stuff, how would you manage what he does? Would you have to have a paid employee, or would you have to look for another volunteer? How would you manage that one? That's invaluable.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and Mr. Hamill and Mr. Carton both are a great asset to the city. When that changes, we're going to have to seriously look at what our FBO, our fixed based operator function, looks like. Mr. Carton and Mr. Hamill put many hours in that most people probably couldn't or wouldn't. So that's a very good question. I wish I had an easy answer to that,
I wanted to bring it up.
And it's a very good point to bring up, that if and when that happens, we're going to have to really look at that facility in its FBO position.
Mr. McLean?
Well, so FBOs rely obviously on activity at the airport, and to be able to provide all which they have to provide in order to be designated an FBO, they need activity to occur. To the extent that we've reduced our hangars and we have fewer aircraft being at the airport, that does present a bit of a problem, a challenge, and the fact that we keep the revenue from the fuel sales, which is a good thing that we do it, but there are airports that actually share or give away that revenue to the FBO. The airport probably has a long-term strategy that I'm just not familiar with, but my hope would be that it would include the potential of growing the business opportunities out there, which would include which would probably have to extend the runway. I don't want to scare anybody, it's just talking about it. You extend the runway, you can get larger aircraft in. Larger aircraft bring end fees, they provide you more money, and also fuel in that location. The beauty of having jet aircraft, for example, from a corporate account, is that they bring in some serious dollars, and they also make it a more viable aircraft, and they can be located anywhere, because whoever has one of those, it's not really an issue if it has to fly, a couple hundred miles to where it needs to make its pickups and drop-offs. And it is actually can save some real money by being in an airport like ours. So, there's opportunity how we grow the airport, whether or not you want to invest in hangars. If you had a supply and demand ability that would allow us to invest in hangars, oftentimes is a very short payback requirement. Once you get past those few years of recouping your expense, as long as you have a waiting list for aircraft to be put into the hangar, you can actually begin to make some serious revenue on hangars as well. So that all leads to then having a very successful FBO in your airport, because then they have business opportunity, whether it's in the mechanic side or whether it's in schools for new pilots, or people who are interested in becoming pilots, things of that nature.
Councilor Stowe?
I know we've talked about it in the past, but have we improved any way of tracking the actual use of the airport in the last fiscal year?
It's a difficult thing to do and almost impossible. I know that you've
They're
asked
still
that
doing
question.
it-
It's
still
a
doing
great
the notebook?
question, but it's an uncontrolled general aviation airport. People can come and go.
We need to have those strips like they put on Washington
Right.
Street, right?
Well, you get touchdowns, though, so it's hard to know exactly what you're getting. Can you tell us what your fuel sales have done? Because that might give you an idea of activity.
Fuel sales, let's see, about 13,000 gallons a year is what we're,
Is that staying pretty much the same?
pretty much the same. Our request for gasoline has stayed the same in the last two budgets at 85,000. I'm just about ready to tap in what's left in that budget to fill the tanks, probably in June. But just to add to the answers that Mr. McLean gave you, a month or so ago, I came before the council for a resolution to accept and expend funds for the master plan update. The current plan is 21 years old. So with the update, we'll see real data on what we can do with the airport, as Mr. McLean indicated, whether we can extend it, what the approaches look like this summer and in the fall. We're going to have two chances to take photographs of the surrounding areas, the approaches and the safety zone, and plug that into the data so that we can see what we can do to extend the runway if we can. Right now on our 29 runway, which is the west end of the airport, the encroachment or the approach is compromised because of trees. So they'll look at those type of things to see if we can extend the runway, because we're not using the full length of the runway. If you go out to the runway, there's a white line that's short of the end of the runway, because that's the only usable part of the runway. The angle of approach is too steep. So they'll look into those things. Again, hangar space, whether we need to look into more hangar space, growth in the idea of FBOs and so on and so forth. So we're going to have a great opportunity here within the next year to see what that looks like. In addition to that, part of the process requires a public hearing and public input, and we're going to utilize the Airport Advisory Board as part of that committee too. So Councilor Sire will be part of that, and then in discussions with Director Merrill, she's going to target one of her team members to that committee so that we can incorporate our two master plans, because even though the airport master plan and the city master plan kind of work independently, they're not dependent upon each other directly, but the data that we get and they get can be incorporated and possibly utilize it so that we can work in unison in development. Because we do have some potential for development industry-wise. We do have some land that Director Merrill thinks that we could target for industrial property. Basically, what that means is land lease.
Yeah, we can't sell the property, as you all know. And so the problem that we encounter there, but it is one that can be resolved, is that who owns the building at the end of the lease? And of course, there has to be a long enough lease for whoever it is that's investing in the property that they can get out of that investment, that they can amortize it over a period of time, that they can actually make it work for them. City of Keene, for example, when it brought in C&S Wholesale Grocers, who utilized the airport and built a hangar on the airport, it was a complicated arrangement, but it had to take into consideration the fact that the hangars would eventually revert back to the property of the airport. So it's doable, and it's just a matter of how you work out those leases.
Other questions? Yes, Councilor Kowalski.
In the construction of the new terminal building, is there anything funding-wise for furniture, fixtures, microwave, whatever, anything?
No, not directly.
And that's something I wanted to look at adding in as we go through this budget, because we're putting a brand-new building up and we're adding the city's stored furniture that no other department is using can go to that location. I really don't think that's the image. And kudos for a plan to put something there, but I think that furniture and fixtures should be a line item in this airport budget.
I'm not certain I understand what you were saying.
I do, I understand what he's saying.
Oh.
So, yeah, I wasn't part of the building of that particular budget, but, and of course, the FAA wouldn't pay for those types of things,
Yep.
so it wouldn't have been in the original grant. It is the difference of having, you know, for the example, the pilot lounge and things like that, they have the appropriate chairs and tables, and if there's a small kitchenette there, for example, that it has the appropriate things that you would find in that. So that's a separate budget, and I don't know about the surfaces. Do we have surface treatment in the budget in terms of cabinetry and things of that
Yes.
nature?
Yes.
So it's just the furniture side of the budget, and we can take a look at that. There's probably ways for us to tap into some surplus furniture outlets versus paying full price, or we can get discounted furniture that will look great because some office someplace decided to go for something new and different. So we can certainly take a look at that and come back to the council, and that's something you could appropriate on a recommendation that we could give you later.
I'd appreciate that. I mean, it's a selling feature, and once you arrive here,
You need to
it's-
figure out what furniture you want.
We have time. You know, we have some idea of when appropriations are going to come. You know, the funding mechanism from FAA. We're looking at, you know, August, September, hopeful. But the reality is, we're probably going to see the funding come in December, and we're certainly not going to break ground in December, January. So, if I was someone to predict something, I would say that this time next year you're going to see that building start construction. We may see some demo, but I think we have time. I agree with you, but I think we have time to look into that.
The only thing I would say is not to rule out the possibility of breaking ground in December, January, and February, particularly since it's a slab grade. I'm not saying we would do it, but I certainly would take a look at it because I think it depends. Oftentimes you can get an early start. And if you do it in the right time, you can get a better bid because they're not quite as busy. So it's just a thought. I'm not saying you do it, but I wouldn't rule it out completely.
Councilor Stone.
I'd make a motion to accept the city manager's proposed budget for the airport for $1,112,954.
Second.
So, just for clarity, I think it's 112.
Oh, sorry, 100.
112,954.
Afternoon, after lunch.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, well, I got his hand first. So, Councilor Stone made the motion. It was seconded by Councilor Ahern. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, it passes. So, next are elections. That's on page 40 of your book. Thank you, Chief Burton.
The election budget is down 5%, almost 4.5%.
There's nobody showing up.
We have 2 elections. I keep trying to tweak exactly what it's going to cost us for ballot clerks, moderators and stuff. We have about 60 people that are active in the election cycle. They're not all used in every election, but we have some that are snowbirds and aren't available in the wintertime. So the city clerk actually operates that out of her office, and we still are going to have to deal with new voter equipment at some point, so there is another $1,000 to go into the capital escrow. But even with that, the budget is down.
Are there any questions? If not, would people like to make a motion?
Make the motion to approve the city manager's budget proposal of $13,683 for the elections.
Is there a second? Okay, so the motion was made by Councilor Pope and seconded by Councilor Kier. I heard her. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, that passes. Next is debt retirement. I believe that's on page 26. Maybe not. Where is it?
Page, hang on. I just have it on my spreadsheet, so it's 461 would be the numbers. Should be on page 66? 65.
66.
65.
65, thank you. Sorry about that, Council.
It's short because we don't have much. So debt retirement is about level funded. It's up $400, but we are picking up the loan for CDFA LED lights at the CS Community Center this year. Right now, it's on a monthly payment cycle, and we'll start our first debt payment reduction this coming July. Excuse me. So even though we have been decreasing our other debt, we are picking that one up, but it's still only up $400 this year.
Beautiful.
The debt schedule in here as well.
I had given that to them, yes. I don't have a copy of it here in front of me. I can pull one up for you.
So, go ahead, Assistant Mayor Dameron, you had a question?
No question, I was going to make a motion.
So how does this look for our debt to, what's the right word I'm looking for, debt to something ratio?
7.5.
Debt to income ratio?
Yeah.
General fund.
How does this look for our debt to income ratio?
Oh, it's low. We don't have much debt. We only have $7.5 million on the general fund altogether.
Yeah, okay.
There is a formula that they use, though, the state. What is that formula? Because it's not necessarily the same as you would equate to your own selves as, a private entity. So what's our formula for debt?
I don't have it down.
Okay, I think that the council should have that so you understand it. We don't have it here today, but, what is that formula? What does it look like? Because it actually does have an impact on our bond ratings and what have you. So we have to keep that in mind. And that also begs the question then, how much debt should we be?
Exactly.
And my guess is because we're so low that we could probably actually do more with.
We have about $12 million in unutilized capacity.
Right. So that tells me that depending upon what you want to accomplish and how you stagger that debt, you could probably do more than what you've been doing and keep your costs fairly low. But that goes against what most people think about when they think about debt. They think that the debt is a bad word. And so explaining that and making sure that people understand it and how it works and how it actually helps you to do more, and you keep your costs pretty much even over the years is probably a worthwhile discussion to have.
So could we put that on the agenda sometime in the near future?
I think it should probably be agendized at some point in time, Mayor. I think, again, if we could, what we're going to do is we're going to go back and look at all the things that we've said and done here today and all the promises we've made to you, and then figure out how we can actually bring some of that forward to you, and what things must come first over others. I think we've got a little time with the debt service, but we definitely, as a conversation the council should have, probably through the Finance Committee and then on to the full council, but it's probably going to be a little while before we can get to it.
All right. Let's keep that on our minds, Finance Committee.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is out there.
Any other questions? Who would like to make the motion? Assistant Mayor Dameron?
Yeah, I move to approve the debt service or debt retirement expense budget at $1,170,476.
Second? Is there a second? Okay, so the motion was made by Assistant Mayor Dameron, seconded by Councilor Kier. The amount is $1,170,476. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No, so that passes unanimously. All right, let's take a, 5-10 minute break before we go?
10-minute break.
How many, 10?
10.
10, all right. We're on at the final stretch. So, next is city administration, which I think is on page 38 of your book.
It is.
Mr. McLean, would you like to say a few words?
Well, I'd like to talk about the city manager. No.
This is my budget.
Okay.
I heard he's pretty amazing.
Yeah, he should stay.
Yeah. So we actually, this is Mary's budget, and of course, no one knows the budget better than she does, so I'm going to turn it right over to her.
My budget's down this year. I have 2 people in IT, one being Super Chris that everybody keeps hearing about, and he is an incredible person. I would be absolutely lost without him. There's probably many nights where you guys have traveled by City Hall and still seen him here at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, which is pretty worrisome. But I have 2 people in IT. I have a 1 part-time person that's paid by water and sewer. I have 3 out in the clerk's office, and I have 3 in the finance department. So we do a lot with a very limited amount of staff. We bring in probably 2.5 times what it costs to operate our budget. And I couldn't do it without the staff that we have. You're very lucky. We have the median age of years of service to the city is 12.5 years. And I have 1 employee with 24 years, 1 employee with 25 years, a lot of people with a lot of years. So we do very well, and we've learned how to do a lot of efficiencies. And I will answer any questions that you have on my budget.
Okay, questions? Yes, Councilor Pope.
I believe this is the one city manager's salary is incorrect.
No.
Okay.
He's in the policy
In the
executive.
policy, okay.
Yep, that's where you and
Questions?
No question.
Councilor Hearn.
On the city clerks, yeah, how many part-time or temporary?
I have 1 temporary person that comes in. Yeah.
And how much does that cost the city?
Well, it depends on how long I can book her hours for, but I believe that we have her, hang on, I'm looking. I have her in next year for $3,000.
Okay, so could that be another 3,000? We could have another temporary person in that department?
Another temporary, if we added another 3,000? It would be hard to find. You have to find somebody that's already certified with all of the certifications that they need, and that usually means somebody that's already retired and hasn't retired so long that they've lost their certifications.
Your Honor, so I think that's a really, great question, and I'm not sure where the council is going, but I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. So, the same question back, Mary. If you just increased your budget line item by an additional $3,000, could you get additional hours from the person that you have now, and do you need them?
Can I relate that to Gwen, since she's the one that has to run that department? And I mean, this year we've used her a lot more. Barbara, we've moved money from other lines, but Gwen, you can speak to that.
Luckily, she's still willing to work. I'm not sure why, but she likes to come in. Winter is more, we try to just use her at the busy times. Of course, we're going to quarterly water and sewer billing soon. So, and next year is a presidential election year. I'm going to use her as much as she's willing to work for the money that we have.
But do you think she'd be willing to work more hours if we had more money in this fund? Or is she pretty much burned out from what we use her now?
I think she's willing to work pretty much whenever I need her. I think season-wise, in the winter, probably be able to get her more, since she is retired and nice weather brings her. But she would probably be willing to work a little bit, not a whole lot. I mean, she's not looking for close to full-time hours or anything.
So the question then becomes, what does she do for you that provides you with more capacity? Because I know that one of the things that we've learned with you filling in doing the minutes here, for example, is the tremendous stress it's putting on you relative to the hours that you have to devote to all the different activities that you have.
When she's there working, it allows me not to have to wait wait the counter, so I can do the things that I need to do.
So I think Councilor O'Hearn is on to something here, but I think we'd have to have more information relative to how you would use that position. But if the council were open to that possibility of increasing the capacity at that position, and we had a person who actually can do that for us, I think what we've learned here in the recent times is that it would be great to be able to give Gwen more opportunity to do some of the management of the clerk's office than she's able to do right now, waiting on customers and clients. So perhaps that's something, Gwen, you could give us. Talking to Mary, you could provide us with that in the not-too-distant future so we can come back to the council as we close out this budget conversation.
Yep, I can check with Barbara.
Councilor O'Hearn, I hope I didn't take liberties with where you were going, but does that satisfy the line of questioning you had?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, he wanted to take the money out. Good sell.
I apologize if I took liberties.
Any other questions? Council Kidd?
If there are any questions.
If there are no other questions, you sure? Go ahead.
If we're waiting for more information, should we defer?
No.
Tentative
Yeah,
approval.
I would like to do
Trying
that.
to tentatively approve everything and then go back as we need.
All right.
Unless I'm wrong.
No, I'm okay with, we can revisit it.
Yeah, I have like notes of all the ones we're going to revisit, so I mean.
Okay.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
so I would motion to tentatively approve the city admin finance IT total at $876,517.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so the motion was made by Councilor Kier, seconded by Councilor Zullo. The figure is $876,517. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposition? Councilor O'Hearn is the only one. Okay, wait a minute. So those in opposition are Councilor O'Hearn, Councilor Kolowski, Councilor Pope. Okay. Moving on to, I wasn't sure of the page number on this, Municipal Complex.
43.
What is it, 43? 43, thank you, Councilor. Okay.
So maintenance also falls under me, and this is probably the area that is the hardest. It's the maintenance of this building. As you have all become well aware, this building is very large, and it encompasses 5 floors over on the PD and the court system, this building here, and it's all very old. We try to make do as best we can, but things fall apart. I have one full-time person who has been with the city for over 24 years, and I have 2 part-time people that equate to a full-time person. One works strictly in the courts and the PD section, and the other works over here nights, doing light custodial work, excuse me. Really, it's left up to Peter to try to manage the maintenance and the overseeing of other people that are coming in here to try to help do work on the building. We had put in $100,000 last year to try to do the flat roof portion. I'm still trying to figure out whether we can phase that in because estimates have been all over the ballpark and we don't have a really good handle on it. As far as the handicap bathroom, which was also appropriated last year, we do have that under contract. We went out for proposals and chose a company. So that should be started and hopefully done before this year ends. In next year's budget, we had a proposal for $30,000 to go toward the flat roof because I don't think we're going to have enough money in there with the 100 that we have. The other thing that was up was general supplies. We had cut $3,000 in the last budget because I was able to go ahead and pre-purchase stuff from the year before's money. I'm not going to have that option this year, so I am going to need that $3,000 again for supplies. And other than that, I think everything else has pretty much stayed the same. The budget overall is down, but that was because there was a one-time appropriation of that $100,000.
Questions? I do have one under the building M&R.
Yep.
Given how old this building is and all of its unique challenges, I wasn't quite sure why it's $10,000 less than last year's approved budget.
Well, 10,000, last year there was a one-time work that we were going to do on that, but generally that building M&R covers tile, carpet replacement, and if we, carpeting, cleaning, that kind of thing. And if we have money left over, what our goal is it's going to cost about $2,200 per window. And if we could save enough money, we have 50 windows that need to be replaced here. So the goal is that whatever we don't need for building M&R, doing wall replacement, fixture replacement, those kind of things, we wanted to be able to save that. But we've never been able to really do anything other than last minute maintenance, not planning ahead and trying to work on something, because it's generally the rules that come down say level fund the budget. So that's what we've been trying to do.
So when you say windows have to be replaced on this building, why?
We have the recommendation from the energy efficiency from 10 years ago said that all of these windows should be replaced, and there's been 2 in the finance office on the other side. There's been 2 on my side of my office, but all of these windows all along the sides of the building all need to be replaced and put in with energy efficient windows. And they're about $2,200 each.
And would they be similar? I
Yes.
mean, to fit the historic nature of the building?
Yes. Yeah. So you can't really tell my office, they look the same from the outside.
What's the cost analysis on replacing those windows and the energy that would be saved?
It was in that energy report. I don't have that in front of me because it was so long ago, but there was a definite cost efficiency of doing that. We have a lot of heat loss there.
So we could get that number?
Yep. One of the windows, because the wind blows up through Mount Escutney, I always laugh that we could put a windmill up on top of Flat Rock up there and make money. But the window will actually shake in my office, you know, from the wind blowing. You can feel the breeze coming through.
Other questions? Councilor Kolaski?
I just had a general comment, and it relates to another budget, but for this facility, we have a full-time maintenance person and 2 custodial, so it's not odd to me that a community center might need a maintenance person.
Yeah, but they also they have an outside cleaning service that,
I know, but
you know.
I equate that to the custodial that you
Yeah,
have.
that's right, it is.
Other comments, questions? Motion to tentatively approve?
I'd like to add in the windows.
Yeah, that's the total.
I'd make a motion to tentatively approve the municipal complex budget for $431,158.
Second.
Wait a minute. Are you adding it?
That includes $33,000 for windows, which is,
How did you get 33?
she said it was $2,200 for 15 windows.
50. I think
I have 50 windows.
Oh, I thought you
No.
said 15.
Never
No.
mind.
Sorry.
Rescind the motion.
Ah, I misheard you.
You can only get a part of your window.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
that's
that's a little
why
bit
we're trying to just
time.
pick away at it, you know?
Yeah, that would be.
The top side.
So I think it's really admirable that we want to do the right thing with this building, you know. But I think if we haven't looked at that return on investment in a while, we probably ought to before we undertake a big project like that.
Yeah. Okay, so is there another motion? Councilor Stone, you had your hand up.
I'd make a motion to accept the city manager's proposal for municipal complex expenses in $398,158.
Is there a second? Okay, so Councilor Stone made the motion. It was seconded by Councilor Zullo. The final number is $398,158. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Next policy, and that can be found on page 36.
For all practical purposes, it's the city manager's budget. And councils. Do we have enough money in there for you?
If you want to add money, here's the way, right?
No. So you'll notice that the regular pay line item and the corresponding benefits reflects what we thought the council thought that they would want to have in its budget for the recruiting of the next city manager. So that's why you have these numbers. That does not mean you have to pay that, just that you have now some flexibility and the budget reflects it.
And that number was based on a city manager's salary of, what, 135 base salary?
Yes. But we know that that is depending upon qualifications and negotiable.
Right.
And that also has the legal floater that position full-time this year, instead of at 70% that we did last year.
Yes.
So it's a pretty straightforward budget. That's really the increase. It's to reflect the pay for salary for the next city manager. You have a question?
I do.
Right over here.
Can you tell me what the wellness initiatives are?
Yep, HR was moved into the policy budget a couple of years ago, maybe last year, Debbie?
Last year, yeah.
Last year. So things came out of my budget and up into hers, and that wellness benefit is something out of her area.
Awesome, thank you.
And I didn't say a lot about our HR director. You don't see a lot of her, but she's obviously always working on our behalf. One person trying to manage all the people that we have in this organization, benefit-wise, recruitment-wise, et cetera. We're very thankful for Betty and appreciate all her efforts.
I've become more familiar with her via email over the last 3, 4, 5 weeks than I have in my prior time here. Thank you.
For line 520, can you explain that as well?
520, equipment M&R. I'm going to have to refer that to Mary because that's the number the chief's plugged in. Equipment M&R 520, Mary, 2100.
Yep, this is the onboarding software maintenance cost for HR.
Okay.
Are you getting a lot more requests from boards? Is that why that's up?
The assessing board? It's
It
up
just says-
1,500 for assessing?
It says miscellaneous expenses board requests, 203.
Right, but it's up $1,500, correct? That's the assessing board you guys created?
Okay, perfect.
Could you speak to both property maintenance and property M&R cleanup of property? And the reason why I'm saying that is because for property maintenance, we approved $15,000, which is what's being proposed this time. However, the expense to date for 2019 is $544.50.
So you had, this was City Manager McNutt's charge was to try to get this nice committee and get properties cleaned up, and he had requested this. It has gone over really well. However, we have had to use almost every spare dollar that I have this year because we have to pay out Mr. McNutt's salary. So we've moved most of those expenses, most of the code enforcement and cleanup that we've done it through the legal department in the 417, and we've used the outside legal counsel a lot more to do code enforcement with our 2 code guys at planning and development. So there hasn't been as much focus on actually, unless we take a property and have cleanup of that property that the city has taken, which we haven't done, that money, as much as we could, I've moved all those available resources to paying out Ryan, and we still have paying out for next year at the end of June, so I'll need some more money there as well. So we purposely not spent money this year if possible. But I don't think that's that they don't want to do cleanup. I just think that, you know, as a resource, we've kind of froze everything that we could.
Anything else? Councilor Kier?
I'd make a motion to tentatively approve the policy HR council budget at $644,897.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so the motion was made by Counselor Keir, seconded by Assistant Mayor Dameron. The amount being $644,897. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Counselors O'Hearn and Stone are opposed. Next is outside agency request. That's on page 75.
That's the Southwest Community Services, the bus service that we have with them. They did ask for an additional $5,000. This is the one service that goes directly to, many, their clients are obviously many people who live in Claremont. So the council has made the decision in the past, even though it's no longer supporting a lot of outside agencies, you do continue to see the benefit of supporting this one. And they've asked for a $5,000 increase. I get that. I understand that the costs go up, particularly relative to fuels and other expenses, and as equipment ages. So we could actually have them come in and speak to you if you'd like that, or otherwise you could adjust accordingly if you think the 5,000 is something that would be reasonable.
This is still coming from fund balance.
Yes.
That's what they requested.
Counselor Pope.
I'd like to have them come and talk to us, but for the moment, I'd like just maybe I would like to tentatively approve this at $25,000.
Certainly reasonable, and we could have them come and speak to you.
I'll make that motion, sorry.
Wait a minute. Before you make the motion, would you like to have them come in before the budget season's over for us?
I would, and that's why the tentative approval.
So that would have to be on the second meeting in June, because our first meeting in June's packed now.
You're scheduled to approve this.
What did our May meeting look like?
We could
wait a
ask.
minute.
Second meeting.
We could ask if they
Never
could
mind,
come.
scratch that. I'm in the wrong month. I'm looking at, we could do it in the first meeting of June. Is that okay?
Yeah,
That'll work for you.
Yeah, as long as it's before they vote on
Okay.
it.
Will you be reaching out to them, Ras?
Yes, yeah, we'll reach out to them.
Okay. All right, I think you were going to try to make a motion, weren't you?
yeah, I wanted to tentatively approve it at $25,000.
Yes, go ahead.
I'll second
Do you have a question? Okay.
I'm just gonna accuse myself from this because I do work for the agency that runs the buses.
Oh, my goodness. Okay,
Yeah.
can you go down there? You have to go down
Oh, I
there.
have to go down there?
Yes, you have to go down there.
All right.
And then keep walking as you go up.
Yeah, no, without making it myself.
You're almost done.
So Counselor Pope, would you like to make the motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to tentatively approve the outside agency request at $25,000.
Second.
Okay, so that motion was made by Counselor Pope and seconded by Counselor Keir. The number is 25,000. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, so that passes unanimously. You may return to your seat, Counselor Zula.
Oh, my goodness.
Thanks.
Long time no see.
Next is General Services, and that is page 48 of your budget.
General services budget, I refer to it as a budget where it's all the city services that are shared. So things like legal that are shared among all departments, the property liability insurance is here, the audit, the ambulance service. There are a lot of different things that you can see from your line items in there. This budget is down 20%. The major issues were the money that we had for last year that covered some of the agreements that had been given out. The TIF is down quite a bit from last year. And other than that, one of the department requests that we pulled out was the GASB liability, which, as John had said earlier, he doesn't believe that we are creating an issue if we don't fund it this year. Excuse me. Retirement reserve is also in there. We have a retirement reserve OPEB liability account that we reserved money from several years ago, and I have 3 potential retirees. If they don't retire, I don't take it out of that reserve, so it's an in and out account. It's a wash. And let me see what else might trigger. I have significantly increased legal this year. It's still under what we were paying Jane with salary and benefits, but the 95,000 we had in there obviously was nowhere near enough, and if we're gonna have a new city manager, I would rather have extra in there than not have enough.
So what was the full amount that we were paying Attorney Taylor?
Attorney Taylor, I can tell you that in a minute, so if you ask any other questions while I'm looking that up.
Okay.
So while she's looking that up, so we do have the 90,000 in under payroll per negotiations, which also would be 630, which also includes the merit plan as well. So we have not only the AFSCME adjustments, but also 2% in there for the merit plan, and we're prepared to talk about that briefly this afternoon. And the GASB, I would just simply indicate about the GASB, the 15328, that both Mary and I agreed, just so you understand, that we both agreed that we did not have to fund GASB. And so I certainly wouldn't do that unilaterally on my own. I would certainly want my partner to be on board with me. Would it be nice if we could? Yes. Is it required? No. So we agreed that it wasn't required to do.
Could you speak to the overlay? Because we had 435,000 last year. This year, we're proposing 125,000.
Yeah, so normally it's not like I ever spend this money. This money is not spent. It is simply budgeted, appropriated here so that when I go to set the tax rate, you're not going to be surprised of why the tax rate went up 3 cents, 4 cents, or 5 cents, because overlay has to be covered at whatever the assessors have given back. One of the agreements that they had made the year before last was an abatement to Claremont Savings Bank, and the payment was not going to be made until July of this past year. So I knew that the overlay was going to need to be upped, and that was why I had put it in the budget. However, we're not going to need that this year. I typically only put in 125 to 150 unless I know, like I was a little leery this year because we're having the revaluation and I'm not sure exactly where that's going to fall. But the assessor has said that things are looking good with vision, and he's pretty happy with what's happening. So, okay, Jane Taylor was total salary and benefits was 125,000, and then we had legal on top of that. We had legal in the legal line.
So I think what we've learned, and I think we need to continue to look at this over the course of this next year, is that having a full-time city attorney on staff was pretty important for a variety of reasons, both in terms of providing opinions to the city's departments, as well as the city council sitting in at meetings. Certainly must have been very helpful to the city manager and to the city council and to the departments. Parceling the work out now to various attorneys takes a little bit more effort, and we're still learning, I think, as we go, because you have to manage that. You have to manage the amount, just as we have to manage the use of our own time and our priorities, we have to manage that as well. And I think that's something that should continue to be looked at by the city manager's office going forward. And some explanation given on an annual basis relative to the use of all the attorney time that we, legal time that we have, and making sure that we're doing a good job using that particular resource.
And there was 61,000 on top of Jane's salary and benefits, so.
So I guess my question, I've heard in the past that most municipalities now do not have an attorney on staff. I don't know if that's accurate.
I think depending upon the size of the community, certainly the larger communities, and I'm not calling Keene large, but it certainly they had 2 attorneys and a paralegal. Before I left, we reduced it to 1 attorney and a paralegal. Portsmouth, I know, is smaller than Keene, but had a number of attorneys on board. Not necessarily their employees, but they actually had one of their labor attorneys because of the way in which they did business with the various commissions, et cetera. They basically had an outside attorney sitting there in Portsmouth City Hall. You know, Concord certainly would have expertise on staff, you know. So it depends on the size of the community. Most of the towns probably do not have an attorney on their staff, but utilize the same number of attorneys throughout the community, you know, throughout the state that provide that service.
Councilor Kier?
No, go ahead.
Councilor
I
Lasari?
have a question for Mary. When we did have a full-time attorney on board, how much was the whole package a year?
The salary and benefits were $125,000, and then we had another $61,000.
$186,000.
Because I just added up all these legal things, we're up to
Together it's
$162,000.
$186,000.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we're paying a whole lot more than
No.
if we had a,
We're paying $23,500 less.
pardon me,
Paying $23,500 less.
less by having what we're doing?
So
I must have added it differently then.
no, I
But
think
it's
you
not
might have
as-
missed it. So it's the cost for Jane Taylor's position when it was here was about $125,000. Then there was an additional $61,000 on top of that for other outside legal services because the in-house attorney can't cover all of those
Right,
things.
right.
There are some things that require a different level of expertise in the law. So we had a $180,000 bill as opposed to a little over $160,000 now with what Mary is projecting for the outside services that we're receiving.
Was that good?
Yeah, you're still saving money.
Well, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, we
If-
just have to throw out these figures to understand them all.
But it doesn't take much to throw that off because all you have to do is get a significant case or a lawsuit and it can be thrown off, obviously.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Kier?
I would note that I wasn't the biggest fan of going 100% to the legal services and not having someone here on site and on staff. And I would tend to still agree that I think the difference of the $23,500 would more than make up for itself in efficiency and ease of having somebody here with us. I know specifically, not just at council meetings, but zoning board, a lot of what we're dealing with is legalities, and we'll sit there and we don't know an answer to something, so we have to put things off for months at a time, and that's slowing down economic development in our city because we don't have someone here to answer questions for us. So I know that's not the discussion we're having right now, but I just wanted to say, yes, we're saving money, but I'm not sure we've gained as much as we hoped we would have with the change.
We're not sure we could get somebody for that.
Councilor Kolowski, then Councilor Stone.
Councilor Stone has his hand raised.
Councilor Stone?
Basically, by having not our own attorney anymore, we're saving on the labor aspect of things such as, vacation time, insurance, workman's comp, that thing. And also, one thing that's been stressed a lot is you can't have one attorney that, in a perfect world, would do it all. In reality, even with Councilor Kier, there's going to be a level of expertise that's going to go to a different attorney's office than a general practicing attorney that we may retain. So that's something everyone needs to keep in mind.
Oh, yeah, of course. But we'd still be spending less even if we were doing a $125,000 salary and $61,000 in legal fees.
Maybe.
Councilor Kolowski?
I think
We would.
I think a part that, when Alex Scott was here, we were also utilizing his law degree to some extent. So even if you're looking back at those years and Jane's salary plus that, the percentage use of his time for legal services actually would bump that number.
But it does, we still haven't gotten a good solution unless I'm not aware of it. When we did make the switch in the model that we're using, we still have some issues with regard to what Councilor Kier was speaking to with legal counsel available at the time, either in planning or zoning or policy. The policy is not as much of an issue because we have time to go back and forth. We don't have an applicant sitting in front of us. It is a bit disconcerting when we don't have, having been on the planning board and Councilor Kier on the zoning board, it's a little bit disconcerting and it doesn't project the professionalism that I think we would like to have to the applicants when we don't have any legal response to a question. So, Councilor Kolowski?
The one that concerns me the most is zoning, because the authority that board has, and
Planning's the same.
And I watched a lot of those meetings, and when Jane was even here and present during those meetings, I think she was utilized a lot.
Oh, she jumped in all the time.
They may not agree with what she's saying, like we did at some council meetings, but that's the one that concerns me, not having access to that during those meetings. And I think you're right. If somebody comes out and is expecting a decision, those decisions that are rendered could cost us ultimately money going to court to defend those.
I think there's a lot of times that she would save us from ourselves. We didn't know we were doing something wrong.
Right.
And she'd be like, oh, you can't do it that way, you can't phrase it that way. So I think there is a liability there.
Counselor Pope, were you going to say something?
Not about legal, about something else.
Okay, before we go on to something else then, I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, counsel, but I think at some point, just a response from administration as to how can we meet that need? Is there a way to meet that need? To have some type of legal expertise on site for at least planning and zoning, because they're both quasi-judicial boards.
So, I think we can certainly take a look at that and see. I'm making the assumption that Jane Taylor, our former city attorney, was attending those meetings.
Every meeting.
And did she actually give opinions on those
Every
meetings?
meeting.
Zoning, yes.
She gave actual opinions.
Every meeting.
So, but she had basically prepared ahead of time and
Yes.
knew what the questions were with the terms of the legalities. But if there was a particular position that was being taken or asked about that she hadn't prepared for, I'm sure she would have requested more time in order to provide you with that.
I'm sure there were a handful of situations, but the majority of the time she had answers, or she had books with her where she could look up the answer for us. There was very seldom that we had to stop and come back, whereas
Okay.
now that's the norm.
That makes very good sense to me, and I just wanted to make sure I
Yeah,
understood
yeah.
that, because I think most attorneys I've worked with, as long as they're prepared for it, yes. But if they're not prepared for it, they're going to want more time. But certainly, I think it would certainly help you with the ease of the meeting and to get through it more quickly, and that's a good thing for the applicant, of course. Now, do we have to have an in-house attorney for that? It's nice if we do. But if we don't, you can certainly get that. You can certainly pay for that experience as well. And at some point, however, it's going to be a question as to whether or not it's more cost-effective to have somebody in-house versus outside. And 91A requests, I think she was handling all the 91A requests too, which would certainly be a real help to the city manager's office.
I think Councilor Pope had his hand in the
Bob, are you still talking about legal?
I was just going to make the same statement I made when we made the decision to eliminate the in-house attorney, that I think other school districts and other communities have made accommodations and have made it work somehow not to have an attorney physically sitting at City Hall. I think perhaps they have also come to an understanding or arrangement as to when they would want an attorney at a zoning board meeting or whatever may be the case. Maybe not all of them, maybe some of them, depending on the ability of the chair of that committee to work with the city manager and so forth in determining the agenda. So I still think it's possible. I don't think we're at a point yet where we need to be deciding in-house or out-of-house. At this point, we just need to know how to work with it better. And we're learning.
And Nancy Merrill does have a law degree.
Yeah.
Are you talking about legal?
Yes, and then just a recent comment.
Okay,
I would
Councilor.
just like to clarify that, not we, because I was not present for that vote. I would recommend that the prior council made that decision, and not this being we, the council now.
Okay. Councilor Pope.
I'm going to go back to the overlay account and the line regarding abatements. We're in a reval season, and I know you said the assessor feels confident about his work that's being done so far, but do you believe that $125,000 is going to be enough in the overlay with the reval going? Because I think the overlay is used to cover some of the rebates, as I recall?
That's good.
Abatements.
Abatements, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's getting late.
I knew what you were talking about.
Because I can remember the last few times we've done this, this number's actually gone up to almost 200,000 just to be safe. So,
The
especially,
revale will be done this year, so I'm hoping there won't be a lot of rebates next year.
I'm hoping that too with 125 in there, but I'm just,
So,
I know we've always gone on the side of caution on that in the reval years.
Yeah,
So
and
I
this-
just,
We don't have any control over what the overlay is when I go to set the tax rate. I don't have any control. I look up the number when I go to get the tax rate set. The disadvantage of that is that my tax rate is set in October and this budget starts July 1st, whereas the other time I had it halfway through the year. So I'm okay with the number. I mean, if it fluctuates a little bit, it fluctuates, but I think we'll be fine.
all right.
Any other questions? Councilor Lassard?
Maybe this is a stupid thought, but what if we did have our own attorney? He would be called, he or she would go to zoning, planning, or any issue without having an office here? Does that make sense? Probably not, but it's a thought. It would be our own, like we had before, our own attorney. And I don't know, it's just an interesting situation.
so I think I'm understanding the council to say that if we had someone on retainer perhaps who would go to those meetings, that might work, and we can certainly explore that if the full council thinks that that's
Keep it simple
worthwhile.
and it might work. I don't know, it's just a
Okay. Councilor O'Hearn?
Mr. McLean, I'm trying to age myself, but I think we've been around for negotiations. Is it always necessary to have an attorney present at negotiations, or should it just be more towards the end, just to tighten things up?
That is a very good question. And as you said, you and I have both negotiated a number of contracts over the years, so I like it now. I don't know that it's absolutely required if you've got a lot of experience, but what I like about it is that that person becomes the well, let me back up and say, if the other party brings an attorney to the meeting, you definitely want to have your attorney in the room at the same time. If they don't, and you have that kind of a relationship where you can just kind of work it out, then you're right. It can all be done at the end. But typically today, almost all of the bargaining units that I see have an attorney present representing them. So it's just as well to have your own attorney, labor attorney, in the room. And do they take the lead? Sometimes they do. Sometimes when you have people who've been negotiating a while, it kind of goes back and forth. And so, for example, I'll take the lead sometimes and not others. But they always record what's being said, and that's important. So that, because we don't get into misunderstandings that way, and then when we get to the very end, when we get into the wording of these contracts, we have, we just have more expertise involved, and it just helps us to not make sure that we don't end up with grievances and other problems later on. So I see the value of having an attorney in the room, unless you have a long-standing situation where the other party is not bringing an attorney to the table, then it would be fine not to have to bring your attorney in.
Okay. Councilor Kowalski?
Random question. Can you just tell me what disaster fund is that's just has $100? Worst disaster fund I've ever seen, by the way, $100.
Well, I don't know what Mary's going to say, but I would say that that's a placeholder, and I know I used it many times over, because without having that in your budget as a line item, if a disaster occurs, you have to have something for FEMA that you can demonstrate that you are prepared.
Okay.
And I think that's a placeholder so that we can get reimbursed if there's a declaration.
Yeah, anytime you see $10, $50, or $100, that's generally what it is.
All right, thank you.
Keep the disasters low.
Sister Mayor,
Just when we get ready to do a tentative approval, assuming we're going to get there pretty quick, I'm going to propose a change to 700, the loan transfer to downtown TIF, to make that amount, instead of $206,590, I would make it $204,590, and reduce the total of $1,012,029 down to $1,010,029.
Yep.
Okay, so before you get there, I just want to mention one last time that we have put money aside. I think it's very important for us to do this, not only the AFSCME contract, which you've already approved and will be distributed accordingly, and will go back into the regular budget. But also there's a small amount of money available to adjust the merit employees in terms of their individual brackets, if you will. Their class, how can I frame it? Okay, brackets is the right word. So one of the things that I think has not gone well over the time has been for the city council or for the employees is to have these adjustments that occur every 5 or 6 years and then have them be significantly higher than other adjustments that you've given to other employees, and it just ends up calling into question whether or not there's fairness. And even if there is, and I think there has been, I think quite frankly, if we look at the information that I've seen so far, it tells me that that's actually worked to the detriment of the majority of the merit plan employees, because they just aren't keeping pace with those who are getting collective bargaining agreements. It just sets up another one of those issues, and I think if there's one thing that creates a lot of speculation and discussion, it's always whether or not people are being treated fairly. And our class and comp system really has to demonstrate its fairness. By adjusting the brackets by 2% this time, and then asking to go out and actually look at a class and comp study for some of these positions to see where we are relative to the market, I think we're recognizing that overall, many, if not most, if not all of them have, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, have had very little compensation adjustment over this period of time. And that works against us. It works against us to the extent that we're not keeping pace with the market conditions, and we're setting up what basically looks unfair. And so keeping those good employees and keeping all that institutional knowledge and encouraging people to do their best and to go above and beyond is what we see is very important in a very lean and mean machine that we have here for employees. We really want to keep encouraging our employees, and we want to pay them accordingly. So this bracket adjustment, we'll come and we'll talk about this later at another time, but I hope that the council understands that we've called this out as an important element of this year's budget.
Okay. Is there a motion to tentatively approve this if there are no further questions? Okay. Assistant Mayor Dammer.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve this budget, the general services expenses budget, at $1,010,029.
Second.
Okay, so that motion was made by Assistant Mayor Dammer, seconded by Councilor Stone. The final number is $1,010,029.
Just to clarify, what was the 2004 again?
Because we changed it when we did the TIF district.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Councilor O'Hearn is opposed. All right, finally, last item, revenue, page 30, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm going to start out first by telling you what the uses of fund balance are in this revenue line.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yep, the uses of fund balance. I have allergies, so my voice is like really low. We have Pleasant Street Streetscapes Engineering Final Design has got $100,000. We have the JSL building has $11,000. We have $25,000 for the bus service. And we now have $204,590 for the downtown TIF. We also are using $500,000 to reduce the tax rate. So that total is $840,900, $590 coming from fund balance. We're also taking another $73,500 from capital reserves. $25,000 of that is for anticipated retirements, which is a wash in the 417 budget. $3,500 is for scholarship revenue in the 482 budget. And the other $45,000 is for the capital reserve for building maintenance for the Claremont Community Center. So those are all built into the budget on the expense side, and this is where they're coming from in the revenue side. The other revenue lines, if you just go and we'll just highlight some of those. The first one in taxes is the same. The second section, interest and penalties. Starting April 1st of 2019, the legislature passed a law that said that interest rates will now drop from 12% to 8%, which is a 33% decrease. And the lien part of it has dropped from 18% to 14%. So those are going to be an impact on us going forward. So we will not be able to collect that amount of revenue. I think the others are, there's not a lot of, I tried to build in as much revenue based on what I saw the growth was. We still are pretty strong in the motor vehicle. People seem to be still buying new cars, which is good. And other than that, I think we're good. I think there's, I guess I'll take any questions. I don't see anything else. Oh, interest income is up quite a bit too. Our interest income earned.
Where are you earning that interest rate?
PDIP.
Any questions? No? Okay, well, while everybody's looking, I have a question with regard to our assessed value. I believe in this current budget, it was about 700 million, and now in this proposed budget, it's slated at about 723 million. And I was just trying to figure out how did we gain about 23 million in assessed value?
I always set it off the MS1, which is the assessed value that the state takes to set our tax rate at. So the tax rate for this current year is based off that 723 million.
Okay.
And that's the number I use.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And that number comes in when?
It has to be done by September 1st.
Yeah, so we get that.
So this coming September 1st, we'll have the new revaluation figures. So if that number jumps to 800 million, technically the tax rate will go down.
Same amount of money, but just lower tax rate.
Yeah,
But
well,
it
we
might-
experienced it in the reverse in 2014.
Right, but it might be distributed differently.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So that's that answer. Excellent. Well, we're moving in the right direction. That's always good news. So we've recouped maybe 22% of our losses. Good. Okay.
Took a while.
Took a while. Okay, anything else?
Over here.
Yes,
Do we
Councilor
need
Pope.
to, in the revenue line, do we need to adjust the TIF district number on that?
I did on my books, but yeah,
You did?
and when you tentatively approve it, yeah.
Where is that line?
It should be.
Last page.
Yeah.
Lump sum balance, downtown TIF district.
I would have the note. 320.
Oh, yeah. So it's 204.
I want you to note the time.
And then that would make,
Mary wants an attic boy.
so that would make it,
We ask for small
951,
favors, just
right?
attaboys once in a while.
Yeah.
don't get too excited.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, Councilor Kolowski.
See if I can eat up 10 minutes. No, I just had a
Somebody
question.
kicked him under the table, right?
I had questions as far as motor vehicle fees and just, does that number take into consideration the ability to register boats here now? Or is that just, you use a formula every year based on what you think will be coming in?
No, I actually look at what they've been tracking and what, because people can buy a new car, new to them may be used, or new could be brand new, and obviously we make more revenue if you're buying brand new versus if you're buying a 6-year-old new-to-you car. So I try to look at what we're budgeting, what we're looking at, and how revenues have been coming in. So, and then I have to play with the economy. What's the economy going to do? Is, our interest rate's going to stay low. So this is all one of those guessing games of, people's ability to buy a car is a direct reflection of how much disposable income they think they have. So that's what I do. There's no written science in it other than the fact that we generally register about 15,000 vehicles a year.
And the boats aren't a huge money maker, but it's a huge convenience. People have already gotten the message that we do them. We've done like close to 50, I think, in the last month.
And too cold to use a boat.
And considering we don't have boat access anywhere, right?
More of a point of interest, it looks like the line item for Sugar River Power LLC doubled in revenue.
Yep, so if you remember, that was a pilot that we gave him to start up and do that, and the base was 6,000. And then once he got operating, he would pay a percentage of what his energy was, so.
Perfect. I
That's
couldn't
why
remember,
that's-
thank you.
You're welcome. I don't always remember either, so.
Okay.
Based upon the fact that the council is particularly aggressive in terms of revenue numbers for this current year, I think these look fine to me. So I'm ready to have a tentative approval for the grand total of $5,951,216.
Second. Okay, so that motion was made by Assistant Mayor Dameron and seconded by Councilor Kier. The final number is $5,951,216. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, that does it. Next on the agenda is consultation with legal counsel. I don't believe we have any. And then adjournment. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
So the motion to adjourn was made by Councilor O'Hearn and seconded by Councilor Zullo. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.